Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3, the game streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Yesterday, we had a rained out second half of the program. Hope everybody is safe. There is a giant tree down in the middle of my driveway, so we'll have to deal with that. A $2,000 storm for me. I don't know about everybody else. Hope everybody else is doing okay. The chairman of the board, David Reed, is here today. Hello, David Reed.
$2,000 to remove that tree?
Yeah, because the tree, it's a giant old huckleberry tree or hackberry tree.
Hackberry.
Or something. Hackberry tree. And it's split right in half. And so one half went down in the driveway. So if we were to just clean up the part that's in the driveway, then the other half is probably already dead and likely to eventually fall the other way, which would land on the house, which is probably not something that I'd want. And then if I'm going to do it, like I want the stump grounded, I want the roots out, I want, the start from zero. So yeah, it's expensive.
It sounds like I'm in the wrong business.
You are definitely in the wrong business compared to tree service people who I'm guessing that today is like their Super Bowl. But
it's Christmas Day.
So I want to start on something that, again, I heard yesterday and I knew was going to be a big deal and was on the grid yesterday before we got rained out. But it's just not that big a deal to me. In fact, I think we're looking at all of this wrong. And that is the idea that Cam Ward is going to be splitting reps with OTAs around the corner, the real OTAs, the phase 3 offense versus defense, first team, second team, third team, and that he will be splitting reps at the quarterback position. And Titan fans yesterday on social media were absolutely outraged. How dare they have Cam Ward split reps? And I'm going to tell you, this isn't a big deal to me. And I'll tell you why. Number one, it's obvious that Cam Ward is going to be the starting quarterback of the Titans. It's obvious. They unretired Warren Moon's number for Cam Ward. Now, imagine this. They unretire Warren Moon's number and they sit him on the bench. They're not going to do that. They would have gone out, if they really were thinking about sitting him, they would have gone out and they would have signed somebody better, like Daniel Jones. Now, a lot of you think that it's just a felony for Cam Ward to sit on the bench to begin the season, because deep down inside, you think that everybody else stinks and you want to see him right now. And I get it. That's your business. You don't want to watch Will Levis anymore. I don't want to watch Will Levis anymore. You don't want to watch Brandon Allen. I don't necessarily want to watch Brandon Allen. But if the Titans were a smart organization, they would have planned for this ahead of time, or they would have been looking at the long view. And what we've learned about the Titans over the last, handful of years, they're not a very smart organization. So he's going to be the starting quarterback. So if you're sitting there and you hear that, they're splitting reps, how dare they? How dare they put Will Levis out there? Cool it. That's not going to happen. They're not going to play Will Levis. It'll be okay. And the second reason why I don't care is because if they were to sit Cam Ward for the first 2 games of the season or for the first month of the season, I actually think it'd be a pretty good idea, especially the first 2 games. We haven't talked about this since the schedule came out. But other than, I want to see Cam Ward play because I'm an 8-year-old and I can't wait 2 weeks. What is the big deal of Cam Ward playing right away? Let's be realistic about the Titans' schedule. Now that the schedule is out, and we know that it's Denver week 1 on the road and the Rams at home week 2, would it be a terrible idea to sit Cam Ward for the first 2 weeks just to make sure he's ready, just so he can sit back and watch what a real NFL job looks like, just so the offensive line can get 2 games under their belt before you stick him out there with an offensive line that has a new left tackle, an injured center, a new right guard, and a new right tackle. Again, now that the schedule's out, now that we know who it is, Denver week 1, the Rams week 2. Would it be a terrible idea to sit Cam Ward for those first 2 weeks? But Jared, I know. You want to see Cam now. I made a pizza for dinner the other night in the oven. And when I took it out, I went to the microwave and I used the kitchen timer on the microwave and I put 6 minutes on that kitchen timer. Why? Because that pizza needed to cool before I ate it. And we've all been there before. You want it right now and it burns your mouth and you know better. And at 35 years old, I know better. You don't have to have the cookies right away. Denver is traditionally one of the hardest places to play on the road in the entire NFL. Denver and Seattle. I remember when the Titans opened up in 2020, and we talked about a benefit to that being that because of COVID and because of the lack of fans in the stands, it takes away Denver's humongous advantage. And these Denver fans will be absolutely fired up for week 1 because their team made the playoffs last year. Surprisingly, they think they've got a quarterback. They think they're on their way. So you're going to stick Cam Ward in his first game with a brand new offensive line out there at Denver where they can't even hear the snap count. Denver also has a top 10 defense with the reigning defensive player of the year. Week 2, the Rams at home. Now, the Rams defense wasn't top 10. But they have Braden Fisk. They have Jared Verse. They were hot at the end of last year. And the Rams are a smart team, and they were downright nasty at the end of last season. Remember what they did to Minnesota in the playoffs. It's also 2 weeks to allow this offensive line to come together, to learn to play with one another, to get in shape. And the only way you get in shape playing football is to play football. That's it. You can't run on a treadmill and get in shape to play 68 snaps in an NFL game. You have to play. They're not going to play the offensive line the entire preseason, so it gives the offensive line a couple of weeks. So you're protecting your young quarterback. Again, I'm not saying send Cam to the dungeon. I'm not saying Cam needs a redshirt year the way that I felt Malik Willis did when I watched him in training camp in 2022. The way that I said if I owned the Colts or I owned the Titans and I had traded up for Anthony Richardson, I would have gone to the press that night and I would have said he is not playing this season. I don't think you have to do that with Cam Ward. But is it crazy to say, hey, let's not feed him to the wolves week 1 at Denver? Let's not start off on the wrong foot. Let's not get him kicked in the teeth. Let's not ruin his confidence. And remember this, the last 5 MVPs in the NFL, this is completely objective. This is a fact. This is not an opinion. The last 5 MVPs in the NFL are Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Allen. And they all have one thing in common. They did not start week 1 of their rookie seasons. Not one of them. Josh Allen played and started in week 2. But Nathan Peterman started week 1 for the Buffalo Bills. Why is Cam Ward more special than those guys? What does Cam Ward have that Patrick Mahomes didn't have? What does Cam Ward have that Josh Allen didn't have, that Lamar Jackson didn't have, that Aaron Rodgers doesn't have? Is Cam better than they are? I have a hard time saying that today. So when it comes to the Titans splitting these reps in OTAs, I see the outrage, and it is the usual suspects. It is the same Bobo media content creators who went from this quarterback class sucks to Cam is the next Mahomes simply because they knew it would raise their engagement numbers to say it. But spare me the outrage. Maybe consider Cam not starting week 1 or not starting week 2, and consider that might actually be a good thing. Because I think when the Patriots look back on the way they handled Tom Brady, they probably don't regret him sitting on the bench that first year. They probably don't regret in Kansas City how they handled Mahomes, in Green Bay how they handled Aaron Rodgers, in Buffalo how they handled Josh Allen with Nathan Peterman. And again, we're talking about Denver. We're not talking about Jacksonville, where there are no fans. We're not talking about Cincinnati, which has a good fan base, but nobody ever says, oh man, it's hard to win in Cincinnati. We're talking about Denver, one of the two hardest places to play in the entire NFL. Maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea to have Will Levis start that game, to have Brandon Allen start that game. That is, if you're okay with exercising just the tiniest bit of patience. But again, spare me the outrage about splitting reps at OTAs. Because one, he's going to be the starter. Don't worry about it. Because the Titans aren't a smart organization. And what dumb organizations do to ruin these quarterbacks is they stick them out there before they're ready. And two, if he's not the starter week one, I'll actually be impressed. And that will not mean anything negative about Cam Ward. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. That's 615-737-1025. It's not a big deal. Stillman and Company. And here's the other thing that Titan fans seem to be absolutely offended by. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company. What did you find the game?
with Cam going into that, need to beat out the other three quarterbacks that are on the roster, or are you kind of in a spot where Cam needs to have maybe just enough of a grip on what's going on in your system to have confidence in him to draw that first start?
Yeah, I think there's so much work to be done between now and then, particularly for him. So many things that you have to learn as a young quarterback. So I don't get too far down that road personally with him. We're focused on the next day really at this point, trying to get him up to speed as fast as possible and get him ready so he can go compete for a job. And that's ultimately where it all lands right now. So not going to make too many proclamations about September here in May. So feel good about where we're at and the work he's put in, and we'll get there when we get there.
Well done by Brian Callahan. We crapped on the Titans when they fired their PR director, which I still think was a terrible idea, but that was well done being asked about what does Cam have to do to win the job? Well, we got to focus on tomorrow. We can't focus on what's going on in September. We can't. Only that completely contradicts what Mike Borgonzi said the entire time when it came to drafting a young quarterback, which is you got to have a plan. You have to have a plan for the young quarterback. No matter what you do, you got to stick to the plan. When we were in Kansas City, we had Patrick Mahomes, and we stuck to the plan, and it was hard to stick to the plan, but you got to stick to the plan. And so I'll give, again, Brian Callahan credit and bravo for acting as if, we're not sitting in the office talking about September. Give me a break. Now, I have brought up the idea of, hey, if he sits the first 2 weeks and you say, well, we just want to give Cam time, which is not crazy, by the way. Drake May, who, if Drake May was in this year's draft, would be the quarterback of the Titans. Drake May, a better prospect coming out than Cam Ward, sat for a couple of games before becoming the quarterback. And yet, Titans fans on social media, I don't know if all Titan fans are like this, but Titan fans on social media are just furious at Brian Callahan for saying that the Titans will split reps at practice at the quarterback position, and I understand why. Because if Cam Ward was for sure the starter, you would want Cam Ward to get all the practice reps. I agree with that. I think practice matters. I mean, I'm the one that pushes back on you people when the Titans do terribly in practice, and I report it and talk about it after spending all morning out at the practice field watching Will Levis stink it up. I come in here, start talking about him stinking it up, and you people are like, it's just practice. No, practice matters. But everybody has turned this into a Will Levis and Cam Ward splitting first-team reps. That's the headline at ESPN today. Brian Callahan didn't say that. Brian Callahan did not say it's between Levis and Ward. And I think that it should be noted that he didn't say that. Because I think there's a real shot that Brandon Allen is more likely to start than Will Levis. Will Levis got benched last year for Mason Rudolph. And I mean benched. They did the soft benching the first time where they said, oh, yeah, he's too hurt to play, even though he played that Colts game. Oh, yeah, he's too hurt to play. Mason's going to play this week. Then they did the hard benching after the Bengal game where it was like he's out and the other guy's in. They signed Brandon Allen, who is this year's Mason Rudolph. When Brandon Allen started for the Bengals in 2020 after Joe Burrow got hurt, he started 5 games and had basically the exact same statistics that Will Levis did last year. And yet Brandon Allen has 3 seasons of experience with Brian Callahan in Cincinnati. And he has a season under his belt as the backup to Brock Purdy in San Francisco with Kyle Shanahan. Does he stink? Of course. But so does Will Levis. So I have to say, if you're Brian Callahan and you're going to try to get by for a couple of weeks while you prepare Cam Ward to be ready, because again, I do think we're all in agreement. Somebody stop me if you think that we're not. I think we're all in agreement that this is about the next 10 years. It's not about the next 10 minutes. But who's more likely, in your opinion, to not turn the ball over? Brandon Allen or Will Levis? And if you're Brian Callahan, what are you more worried about? In my opinion, it's protecting the football. Well, that's probably Brandon Allen. So everybody's making this Cam versus Levis, which I don't believe. On the surface, it makes sense. And again, if you were trying to stir up some drama about Levis today was 3 of 7 with 1 touchdown, and Cam was, that I don't think that that's really what's going on. I think it's really Cam versus when Cam is ready to succeed with Levis and seeing how much he may or may not have improved with Jordan Palmer versus what Callahan feels like he can probably trust with Brandon Allen. And I told you, if I ran the team on draft night, you would have thought, man, Coach Stillman made it very clear. It sounds like Brandon Allen's going to be the quarterback week 1. The Titans are kind of one toe in, one toe out, kind of breadcrumbs here, breadcrumbs there. But I would not forget about Brandon Allen in all of this. Tim Boyle, you can forget about. Because I know Callahan said, oh, it's both of them. I'm thinking there's a shot. Again, if the Titans have their heads screwed on correctly, and they've made a couple of moves, not many, but they've made a couple that made me think maybe they do. If that's the case, I would not be against starting Brandon Allen week 1. By the way, guess where Brandon Allen has played in the past? Not like played a cup of coffee, but was on their team. Denver. So he knows what he'd be getting into week 1. 615-737-1025 and our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, I'd love to see Cam sit a couple of weeks. That would be the best thing for him. You know, again, I don't know about you guys, but David Reed, I'm going to put you on the spot. Titans at Broncos week 1. Who are you taking?
Broncos.
Titans, Rams week 2. Who are you taking?
Rams.
So what do you lose if Cam Ward sits those 2 weeks?
The possibility of getting hurt the first 2 weeks.
That's all you lose.
Yep.
Again, and this is the thing, too, about the NFL that I know it. You won't admit it, but I know it. You just don't want to watch other people play quarterback. You are excited about Cam. You want to see Cam, and you want it right now. It's like these a-holes that sit in the back of the airplane, and as soon as the thing taxis to the gate, they stand up like, dude, you are still 10 minutes away from getting off this plane. Sit down. People can't handle it. Can't handle it. One text says, this is crazy talk, Jared. There would be riots in the street if you threw the first 2 games of the season with the number 1 pick at quarterback. What does Cam have? Cam has hope for a better season. Seriously? So now I have to play him because I took him number 1? Because Cleveland didn't play Baker Mayfield when they took him number 1, not until Tyrod Taylor got hurt. I don't understand why I have to play him. He went number 1 overall. Okay. So Drake May would have gone number 1 in this class. Drake May was a higher ranked prospect by everybody. And Drake May sat on the bench. Does it matter that he was the number 1 pick versus the number 3 pick? I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Cody says that context matters with the other quarterbacks. Again, the last 5 MVPs that all did not start week 1 of their rookie year, whether it was Brady, Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, Jackson. He says they all had established quarterbacks in front of them. Josh Allen is the only one that you could argue, but he wasn't the number 1 overall pick. You are 100% right about OTAs. Again, who cares about being the number 1 overall pick? The only thing that being the number 1 overall pick matters for, and I mean actually matters, and I've talked about this the whole time with Cam, where, again, I would have taken Cam 15th. I would not have taken Cam first. I would have made the trade with the Giants because I do think there's a collar that goes around your neck when it comes to the expectations of being the number 1 pick. But I'm trying to figure out here, if we're just talking about what actually matters, the tangible football matter, it doesn't matter if you were pick number 1 or pick number 800. I mean, the guy who just signed for $1 gazillion was the last pick in the draft. What matters is whether or not you're ready to play in the NFL. Now, you people have said, oh, number 1, number 1, number 1, number 1. And I'm like, oh, okay, so it would have been different if he was number 2. Would it? Vince Young was number 3. He sat the bench. Again, I don't do this thing where it's like, well, everybody else would go out there and put that player out there. Yeah, but I don't want to be like everybody else. I want to be better than everybody else. You know what everybody else wouldn't do? Everybody else with Alex Smith as their starting quarterback would not trade 2 first-round draft choices to move up and draft a quarterback and sit him on the bench for a year. Do you think they regret that decision? Give me a break. 615-737-1025. More of your phones on this. 615-737-1025. Plus, there's a one thing that everybody seems to be yelling and screaming at me about Jared, you just are so negative. You're such a hater. And there's one thing that I have got to point out that I have not complained about, and I am not complaining about today. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025-1063 The Game. And let me tell all the fine folks, tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Sounds take on Scranton in a doubleheader. First Horizon Park, pregame begins at 4:50, and the first pitch of Game 1 starts at 5:05. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. And we will be giving away Sounds tickets for tomorrow night. We'll be at First Horizon Park tomorrow. We'll be giving away Sounds tickets later today, so be listening for your opportunity to win that. Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Some of those numbers for Dan Moore last year weren't necessarily great in terms of pass blocking. What do you feel like, what gave you guys the confidence that you guys went after him right away and gave him a healthy contract? What's the confidence there that he is the guy, kind of the answer at left tackle?
Yeah, I think you watch all those things. You watch the sacks they give up, you watch the pressures they give up, you watch penalties, and you try to determine what's fixable and maybe what isn't, and what you're okay with. And there's things that I think he can be corrected in technique wise that are going to help him a lot. There's some things that, sometimes you just get beat by good players, which the AFC North has a few of them. And we'll see a few of them ourselves. And so there's that part of it. And how can you help in those situations schematically? But yeah, you watch all of it, and you have to go through and you see what's fixable and what maybe isn't fixable, but you can help with the process of it. So there's no perfect player. They're all going to have things that they got to get better at. And we felt really comfortable with Dan, and he's been fantastic since he's been here in that regard. So excited to have him.
Let me say this. Whatever he's done or hasn't done yet at this point, I don't give a rat's ass about. The guy hadn't worn a pad. And not just pads, but a pad. Has not worn one. So that I don't care about that. But a lot of people have got a rod up their ass, most notably Kaharski, when it comes to Dan Moore Jr., talking about, well, the sacks, they didn't allow too many sacks. And you're Glennon in the question he asked, hey, the numbers on Dan Moore weren't that great, but you guys jumped out right away to sign him. And so, why? And this is where I wish Brian Callahan would have told the truth, because he gave you a bunch of gobbledygook there in that response about, the technique, and you watch the plays, and then you see the development and the anchor and the. Here's the truth. The Titans didn't have a left tackle. They had a right tackle playing left tackle. They did not have a left tackle on the team last year. So they looked at their team and they said, what positions do we need? We talk about it every day. You needed a quarterback, you needed a right tackle or a left tackle, you needed a guard, you needed all these different things. Well, we knew that they knew they were going to take a quarterback with the first pick. So once you've decided that, now you've lost the ability to trade back to get more picks to fill more holes. And at the same time, you filled the quarterback position. So you don't need to spend $30 million on a quarterback. You can go spend $30 million on a tackle. Dan Moore is not a great left tackle in the National Football League. If he was a great left tackle in the National Football League, the Pittsburgh Steelers would have paid him $30 million a season to stay in Pittsburgh. But he's also not terrible. He is a starting caliber left tackle. And I'll tell you how I know he is a starting caliber left tackle. He has started for 4 years. He doesn't miss games. Well, Jared Pittsburgh drafted a left tackle in the first round each of the last 2 years trying to replace him, and they didn't replace him. So even if he wasn't that good, and I'm not claiming that he's that good, but even if he wasn't that good, Pittsburgh had this grand plan to move on from him, and they couldn't do it. The Titans bought themselves a first-round pick. I know Dan Moore was drafted in the 4th round, but when you start at left tackle in the National Football League for 4 years and your team makes the playoffs 3 of those 4 years, you are a legitimate starter. There is not a guy on the Titans when they were good, back in the heyday with the Derrick Henry and the Tannehills and those guys. There's not a guy that started that I wouldn't look at and say, hey, that is a backup player that they are running out there and they are praying to God that it works. Maybe Dennis Kelly in that 2020 season, but go back to 2019. Those guys were starters, every single one of them. Roger Saffold wasn't perfect, but he was a starter. Dan Moore is the best left tackle when he lines up at week 1 against the Denver Broncos. And he'll be going up against Zach Allen and Nick Bonito and guys that are legit. He will be the best left tackle you have had since Taylor Lewan tore his ACL against Buffalo. This is why, again, Brian Callahan should have said this. We didn't have the draft capital to be able to draft a quarterback and draft a starting left tackle. So we signed the one guy in free agency who represented more than a 1-year fix. They couldn't have traded for Laramie Tunsil. Again, they didn't have the draft capital to be able to do that. So you overpay for the one guy on the market. And he's not perfect. He's not even good, but he's serviceable. What the Titans have been doing, whether it was with Dennis Daly, and they did not, by the way, trade for Dennis Daly to start at left tackle. They traded for him to be the swing tackle, and Lawan tore his ACL in week 2. But again, what they've done the last couple of years with Dennis Daly and with PT and with Dillard and with Duncan and with these losers they put out there is they've taken guys that are not starters in the NFL and they have put them in starting positions and they have failed. Dan Moore's a starter. He is infinitely better than those guys. So for the entire crowd out there that's like, Jared, you're always so negative about the Titans. You have not heard me complain about Dan Moore Jr. one time. Not once. I know he's not that good, but he's better than anything else you could have done. And flipping Latham to the right side, that also was the right decision. And I also noticed that yesterday, Brian Callahan talked about J.C. Latham losing a bunch of weight, and I'm in favor of that. Because I said this at the time when they drafted him. I believe the reason that so many Nick Saban, Alabama offensive linemen bust in the NFL is because what Saban does in college is he gets these guys to be so big and so fat and so massive. And in the SEC, even the SEC, the best conference, you're not facing NFL rushers every single week. And if you're facing a team that's got an elite rusher, they've got one. Maybe a team like Texas or Georgia might have 2. But for the most part, week in, week out, 1 at best. Well, you can just be bigger and stronger and just, run over everybody. You can't do that in the NFL. So I appreciate the fact, I like the idea that J.C. Latham has lost the weight. I actually think that's good. 615-737-1025. Andrew says, I've been begging for Cam Ward since August, and I'd give anything for Cam Ward to sit the entire year. You keep saying you people that don't want Cam Ward to sit because you are reading the text from dummies that go with your narrative. Please see what I've been saying. Again, I think this is what I believe about the you people. The usual suspects, the ones that before the Titans earned the number 1 pick said the quarterback class sucked. Then they earned the number 1 pick, and it was, you got to take Cam. If the Titans said, yeah, Brandon Allen's starting, as crazy right now as that is for a lot of you people out there, they would say, you know what, though? Callahan's comfortable with Allen, and this is going to be the best in the long term. Mahomes sat on the bench. I guarantee it. Guarantee it. One texter says, I'll be in Denver week 1. I fully expect another week 1 loss for what feels like the 10th consecutive year. The Titans, I believe, went on the road and did beat Denver in 2020, and I think that's the one time I can remember off the top of my head where they won a week 1 game. I'm trying to think what happened in 2022. Oh, yeah, big boy Randy Bullock missed the kick. That was a bad loss to the Giants. Up 13-0 at halftime, taking the smoke break, and then letting Saquon Barkley just basically end them. That was bad. One texter says, Brian Callahan should not be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Even his dad shouldn't be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. The Titans should have just stuck it out with Vrabel and been done with it. Saying that Dan Moore is a quality left tackle is like saying Jared Stillman is a quality radio personality. Could say that about anybody. I don't know, man. Again, I don't want to sit here and tell you that I think I'm pretty good, but I think I'm pretty good. And I'll leave it at that. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025, if you want to weigh in on the program. Coming up next, Chris Sanders, former Titans receiver. And Chris has said, you got to play Cam Ward, even though Chris played when Steve McNair was on the team, and Steve McNair sat for 2 years. But I'm going to ask this question. We know Denver is one of the hardest places to play in the entire NFL. We know the offensive line is going to take some time to gel. How would you feel if Cam sat the first couple of weeks? How would he feel? We'll ask him next. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Tune into the Indy 500 this Sunday right here on 1025 The Game. Coverage begins at 10 a.m. and is brought to you by Twin Peaks, home of 29-degree beer. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Let's give something away. I'm in a good mood. Be caller 5 right now at 615-737-1025. You want a family 4-pack of tickets to see the Sounds take on Scranton Wilkes-Barre tomorrow at First Horizon Park. First pitch is at 6:35. We, by the way, will be there. And not only will we be there, but my roommate from college is the first base coach for Scranton. So he was actually over at the house earlier today. So we're very excited about all of that. Chris Sanders is excited because the schedule is now out. He joins us on the program. OTAs. Chris, I want to start with this. Titan fans are all worked up because Brian Callahan said they're going to split reps at quarterback during OTAs. Are you worked up about that?
I mean, I'm not really worked out because if you look at last year when Levis was there, he had no competition. Now you bring Cam Ward in, that creates a competition to make his level go up. Because the thing about it is, I know everybody wants to give Cam, the position, but he's got to go out there and earn it. Because if you have a situation to where Cam goes out there and he doesn't play well, then you leave your situation to where Levis has to play. So I think it's a great idea to create competition, but it's also going to make Cam way, way better because he has to compete for it.
Okay, Chris, now what happens if Levis or even Brandon Allen outplays Cam Ward throughout OTAs and training camp? What does Coach Chris Sanders do?
Man, it's going to be a quarterback controversy. But the thing about it is we already know that I'm just saying this is a scenario. Just say if Will Levis started the first game. People are going to be upset. They're going to have a lot of uncertainty. But if he throws one interception, everybody's going to be crying for Cam Ward. So in my opinion, this is just my opinion, I think you start Cam Ward for day one and just let him get his bumps and bruises. But it's going to be a situation we're going to have to really, really watch.
So you say that you think they should start Cam Ward regardless of how they compete on the field, simply because if Levis throws one interception, the fans will be upset about it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that you should, because now you don't want to create a situation to where your guy is in a pressure situation to where he's looking over his back. I know you're creating competition and all those things, but at the end of the day, you want to make sure your starting quarterback feels comfortable. But if he feels like he can't make a mistake or he's got to do everything right and all these things, then that's where you're going to see your quarterback make some mistakes.
So you think competition is better for Cam Ward, but then you don't actually want there to be a competition?
Yeah. I mean, you do want the competition because I think it's just the reason why I love what Bill Callahan is doing is he's making it fair. You don't want to just say, okay, you're the starting quarterback. But in the back of your mind, everybody knows that Cam Ward is going to be the starter because you're not going to not give a whole bunch of draft picks. You're not going to have a chance to get some draft picks from the Giants and get all these things, and then you draft Cam Ward to have him sit the first year. I just think that you have to start him. Yes, create competition, but at the end of the day, I think Cam Ward's got to be the starter.
But if he's got to be the starter and it's his job no matter what, then how's it a competition?
I mean, it is a competition because in his mind, he still thinks that, okay, I got to compete. I still got to make the throw. I still got to make the plays. He's got to understand in this league, they're not going to give it to you. And I just think it's a great job by him making it fair. But in the back of their mind, I've seen this so many times, Cam Ward is going to be the starter.
I agree with everything that you're saying, except for the standpoint that it's not, Chris, it's not a fair competition if it's not really a competition. If the job goes to Cam Ward no matter what, then it's not a competition. They're not competing for anything.
Let me break this down to you. When Stephen there came in, right, Chris Chandler was there. Everybody knew that Chris Chandler was the starter. Everybody knew he's the starter, but there's still going to be some competition. I mean, it's kind of like coach talk. You have to say the right thing, because if you don't say the right thing, then it can really cause some crazy stuff. Because at the end of the day, and I'm just saying that even though there's some competition, day one, Cam Ward is going to be the starter.
Okay, so I ask you this. The Titans play at Denver week 1. Denver is, along with Seattle, one of the two hardest places to play in the National Football League. Denver has a top 10 defense, the reigning defensive player of the year, and your offensive line is going to have a new left tackle, a center returning from injury, a new right tackle, and a new right guard. Would it not make sense with Denver and LA on the roster? Would it not make sense to say, hey, we're going to play Levis or we're going to play Brandon Allen these first? They wouldn't say it publicly, but internally, we're going to play these guys the first 2 weeks. We don't want to put Cam out there where he's got to go to the silent count week 1 against a top 10 defense with 2 edge rushers and get his teeth kicked in. Let's put Levis out there. Let's put Allen out there. And let's give Cam a little bit of time. And then week 3, week 5, something like that, put him out there.
Right, but what would you lose? I mean, if you got a situation to where
we could ruin the quarterback.
Levis you could. I don't think you're going to ruin them this early. I mean, it's only the 1 or 2 games. But you say you go out there, you put Will Levis, he goes out there and throws 3 interceptions, and you lose the game. I mean, why not just keep Cam Ward in and throw him in the fire and let him get better and improve? Because if you're off the cuff going to the Denver Broncos, then you got to play the Rams, and those are 2 hard games. Even if he plays okay, it still gives you some hope that he down the road he can win a lot of ball games. I just
Right,
think
but
that
my point is that
even
he's
though-
not set up to play okay because Denver is very good, especially defensively.
I
Your
understand that.
silent count. So this guy's never played under center before. He's going to be
Okay.
under center with a silent count with a new
Right.
offensive line,
You got it.
and you think there's no
Gotta do
chance,
it.
no matter what, that you could get his teeth kicked in and you could set his development back.
But it's the first year. He's going to go through his bumps and bruises. So even though if he goes into these games and he loses against the Denver Broncos and the Rams, he can go back and film and learn from his mistakes, learn what he can do better because he's going to a hostile environment to where the crowd's going to be crazy. Just like you said, he got 2 edge rushers that are going to hit him in the teeth. But just imagine if you go through the fire early and you go through the bumps and bruises early, it's going to make him a better quarterback. I know that sounds kind of coach talk and cliche-ish, but you go out there and you go against a top 10 defense, you play the Rams, and you lose, but you still can learn and get better because why? He's the face of your franchise.
So fundamentally speaking, Chris Sanders is with us. Do you think the
Sure.
reason that quarterbacks that get drafted high on a consistent basis fail, do you think it is because those guys are no good, or do you think it's because their organizations fail them?
Yes. I just think that it depends on what system they're in. Are you talking about pros or college? You talking about pros?
I'm talking about pros. I'm talking about guys
Okay,
like
yeah.
Sam Darnold with the Jets, Bryce Young with Carolina. Every single one of those guys that, again, coming out, I thought Bryce Young, now I thought he was short, but I thought he'd be good in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, these guys on a consistent basis bust at the top of the draft. And I'm asking you, again, philosophically, do you think it is the teams that ruin the players, or do you think it's the fact that the teams drafted players who just weren't very good?
I think it's a lot has to do with the coaching. I mean, and this is just I never put down a coach and never degrade anybody's coaching, but you got to develop the player. You got to find his skill set. Okay, what makes him good? What does he do better? What can he do to help his team? And I think a lot of times, a lot of quarterbacks that fail, that come into the NFL, you're trying to make him into something that he's not. Just imagine like Michael Vick. Michael Vick wasn't a drop back passer. He wanted to scramble and throw on the run. Don't make him a drop back passer. That's why a lot of quarterbacks fail is because you're trying to conform him into something that he's not. And that's what their problem is. It's like this. I'm going to give you a perfect example. When I first got in the NFL, Les Stecker was my wide receiver coach. A lot of coaches say, okay, you got to do this perfect stance. You got to put your stance this way. Coach Stegel said this. He said, I want you in a stance that you feel comfortable with. And I think that the thing you have to do with quarterbacks, you got to put him in position or a scheme that he feels comfortable with. And that's the reason why a lot of quarterbacks fail, because they get into a system that they're not comfortable with.
So what makes you think that Cam Ward will fit this one? I mean, what's Brian Callahan done to make you think that he's a good enough coach to not ruin Cam Ward?
I think they are, because I think they're going to go back and look at his some of the things that he did in college at the University of Miami and say, okay, we're going to take some of that, not all of it. We're going to take some of that of what he did well and what he did, to make his team win, and put that and implement it into the scheme of what they're doing. So, I don't want to make him something that he's not, to make him be some kind of quarterback to try to be Dan Marino or John Elway. You can't do that. Take his skill set, take what he does well, see what he did in college, and build upon that. And that's how you make a successful quarterback.
Last one for you, Chris Sanders. Derrick
Yes, sir.
Henry gets a massive contract from the Baltimore Ravens. Almost all of it's guaranteed. I have to ask this question. Did the Titans make a mistake giving up on Derrick Henry?
I would have to say, and I love my organization, I would have to say yes. I mean, when you have a guy that's a pillar of your team, a guy that got 2,000 yards, a guy that does everything in the community, a guy that plays every game like it's his last play, those are the kind of cats that you want to build with. I understand that, when Bill Callahan came in, that, the system was going to be different. But I don't care what kind of system that you were in. Derrick Henry was a cornerstone of your team. So I think it was one of the mistakes that they made, because these are the guys that you want in your organization. He does everything right. Great family man and great player, Hall of Fame player, leader, all the things you want in an NFL player, professional. Those are the kind of cats you want to keep on your roster.
Chris Sanders, the all-time least leading rusher in the history of the NFL. My guy, I love you, Chris.
Love you too, brother. Appreciate you, man.
You have Chris Sanders joining us on the program, as always. And there's a reason I said that. Because, as we all know, Emmitt Smith is the all-time leading rusher in NFL history. Chris Sanders is actually the all-time least leading rusher in NFL history with like minus 39 yards or something like that. Speaking of Derrick Henry, speaking of Emmitt Smith, there was a fascinating breakdown on just how close Derrick Henry is to truly being the rushing king. I got a thought on that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios, and we are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. So Derrick Henry signs a massive contract with the Baltimore Ravens that essentially guarantees that he will be their running back this year for a much, I think, well-deserved raise, and for next year with a fully guaranteed salary. Now, the Ravens can get out of it in 2027 when Derrick will be 33 years old, and Derrick is set to be a free agent again at 34 years old. Derrick was actually asked about whether or not, hey, is this going to be it, as far as your contracts are concerned? Said, whoa. I'm not worried about the next contract. I'm just worried about tomorrow. Basically would not say, yeah, this is it for me. And then Pro Football Talk wrote an article after Derrick's contract numbers came out, analyzing if Derrick Henry can be the one to break Emmitt Smith's all-time rushing record. Quote, Mike Florio writes, as potentially unbreakable NFL records go, the all-time rushing mark seems to be the one of the most untouchable. If any current player has a chance to get close enough to make things interesting, it's Ravens running back Derrick Henry. He's the active leading rusher with 11,423 yards. That puts him 19th all time, already ahead of Hall of Famers like John Riggins, O.J. Simpson, Earl Campbell, Jim Taylor, Larry Zonka, and Terrell Davis. In the early weeks of the 2025 season, Henry will leapfrog Steven Jackson and Fred Taylor, barring serious injury, and let's knock on wood for that. Florio writes, Henry likely will finish 2025 in the top 10. Here's the real question, Florio writes, how high will he go? He's 2,628 yards away from the top 6 and 3,495 yards away from the top 5. So stop right there. Derrick Henry is less than 3,500 rushing yards away from being a top 5 all-time leading rusher. Well, even when the Titans were bad with Andre Dillard on the line, Derrick was still running for 1,500 yards. He ran for 1,900 yards last year in Baltimore. I'd say given the fact that he's guaranteed to be the Ravens running back for the next 2 years, and he's guaranteed to be playing with Lamar Jackson for those 2 seasons, barring an injury, Derrick Henry is almost for sure going to be inside the top 5 in 2 years when he is age 32. Florio writes, and the Emmitt Smith record of 18,355 yards is a mere 6,932 yards away. Yes, Henry, Florio writes, now 31, will need several more years of high-end performance to get there. That said, he has shown no signs of slowing down. While the end can come quickly and Father Time remains undefeated, maybe Derrick Henry is the outlier, just like Emmitt Smith was. So Derrick Henry is 7,000 yards away from breaking Emmitt Smith's all-time rushing record. Again, if I was taking the over-under here, I'd take the under. But there's a couple of things that stuck out in my mind when reading this article at Pro Football Talk and thinking about Derrick Henry and whether or not Derrick Henry is going to be the all-time leading rusher in NFL history or even a top 5 rusher in NFL history. The first is this. While most of us look at age 30 for a running back and say, hey, age 30, that's when they start to fall off. Age 30, they're not the same anymore. And many of you told me that at the end when you said, Jared, you have to be honest. He's not the king anymore. And I said, he's the best player on the team running behind a bunch of bozos. Of course, nobody can run through that. Emmitt couldn't run through that. But if there was any running back on the planet today who I would bet on against Father Time, it's Derrick Henry. If there was any football player, nobody is more singularly focused and nobody is going to work harder than Derrick Henry. He is Tom Brady at running back, except he doesn't ever feel the need to write a book about it. He'll do the State Farm commercials. That's as far as he's going to go, and that's it. But again, we watch Derrick Henry every day. We saw every press conference. We saw every workout video. We saw every training session. We saw everything we could see with Derrick Henry. We saw it. You mean to tell me that, and I'm 35 years old. I've been watching football for 25 years. In 25 years, I don't think I've seen a player on a day in, day out basis that's more dedicated than Derrick Henry. And I don't think I've seen a football player who training and football and their body means more to them than Derrick Henry. So when we sit there and say, hey, he's probably going to get the 3,500 yards over the next 2 years. Could he get 7 over the next 4? He's got 3 more years on his contract, so he'd need to be 34, and he'd still need to be productive. And 34, even for me, like 34 is up there. But again, don't bet against Tom Brady. Don't bet against Derrick Henry. And the second thing is, you all told me that it was time to move on from Derrick Henry. I was not ready to move on from Derrick Henry because I thought if you were going to try to establish a young quarterback and you wanted to have the culture of a team that continues to fight and that does things the right way, you need Derrick Henry on that team. But you wanted to move on from Derrick Henry. Rand Carthon wanted to move on from Derrick Henry from the second he got here. Paul, who is best buddies with Mike Vrabel, said that the great Mike Vrabel wanted to move on from Derrick Henry, that he wanted to make that trade to pick up a 4th-round pick in exchange for Derrick Henry. So for all people out there that, again, said, hey, running back, 30, etc., how would you feel if he does break Emmitt Smith's record? And, of course, if he does it, he'll do it as a Raven. As a Titan fan and as a Derrick Henry fan, I would be absolutely appalled. But the difference between me and everybody else is I wanted to keep Derrick Henry all along. Again, you guys need to be honest with yourselves here. Are you willing to bet against Derrick Henry? And just know, if you're willing to bet against Derrick Henry, then I don't know who you're going to bet on. I don't think there's anybody else I'd rather bet on than bet on Derrick Henry. And just know that if he does run for 7,000 more yards, and 7,000's a lot, if he does run for 7,000 more yards, and he breaks that all-time record as a Raven, everybody will remember Derrick Henry as a Raven. That Derrick Henry will be one of the few players who ended up on a second team who everybody remembers them with that team. Drew Brees started on the Chargers. Everybody remembers him as a New Orleans Saint. How would you feel? Would you be okay with it? Because, well, we needed to move on to Tony Pollard, who the coach even said yesterday he'd like to give less carries to because he doesn't think he's built for all those carries. Or Derrick Henry, again, the guy who I think is the best player who's ever played for the Tennessee Titans. But the fact that we're even having this discussion, in my opinion, tells you just how bad the Titans whiffed on where Derrick Henry really was in his career. Because I don't think they thought he was running for 1,900 yards last year. But again, that's what you get with Rand Carthon. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. And yesterday I made fun of Brian Callahan because he's got this cockamamie new idea, this scheme to try to get more leaders on the team. And when looking at Derrick Henry, and again, whether or not he's going to break Emmitt Smith's record, he's definitely going to end up as a top 5 back in terms of rushing yards because he's going to run for 3,500 more yards. There was one thing yesterday, listening to the 4 H's and these 8 teams and trying to define leaders and everything else that I cannot get out of my head. We'll do that next. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman & Company, 1025 the Game.
There's a leadership emphasis, and part of the reason I did what I did with our dividing our team up into teams is now they're all accountable to each other on that team. There's a leadership that starts to grow because now each team has a captain and an alternate, and now you've got more people in leadership spots. One of the things I think is unique about the process is it allows those guys to start to find their own voices, and it's not about an offense versus defense. It's much more of a holistic team approach to it. We encourage these guys to spend a lot more time together, both in the building and out of it. It's been a focus for us, and I think you can develop leadership. I don't think leaders are necessarily just walk into a room ready to lead. I think there's skills you have to learn. You have to have the communication as a leader. You have to know your teammates. We spend a lot more time trying to get to know each other on a level that I think is going to be beneficial to fostering more leadership for more people.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan yesterday. Again, we need more leaders, he said yesterday. That's why I have turned to the Disney tactic to try to find more leaders on the team. I'm separating offense, defense, special teams. I'm putting them all together. I am putting 8 teams and everybody represents, and let's see if guys will develop as leaders. And again, that worked in Remember the Titans. The problem is that's a movie. That's not real life. And even if it were a true story, it's only based on a true story. It doesn't mean that everything in the story is real. And so as I listened to Brian Callahan yesterday talk about these new cockamamie ideas he's got in order to get more and better leaders on the football team, 8 teams mixed between offense, defense, and special teams that will all participate in challenges to earn points for their team in a system with which we don't actually know, and they don't know, because Tony Pollard was asked about it yesterday, didn't have an answer. They don't know what they're going to win. And I heard that, and I laughed out loud, and I just thought to myself, this is the NFL. This is not a 1-week baseball camp for elementary school kids where lunch may or may not be provided. But I don't believe what Brian Callahan said when it came to leaders. This idea that, you develop leaders, that you make them. No, I think some people are leaders, and then as they become more confident based upon doing, they develop the leadership skills with which the natural talent they already have, and some people just aren't. You don't make them. You acquire them. And I look at the football team, and I'm like, when Mike Vrabel, again, leader, Mike Vrabel walked out the door, they replaced him with Brian Callahan. I'm not convinced Brian Callahan's a great leader. I don't think he holds people accountable. I don't think that he's realistic and pushing others in order to fix problems. I think he just says, give it your best try, PT. And that's that. And then after they hired Brian Callahan, they showed the door to Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill, and they had already said goodbye to Kevin Byard. And then they let go of Harold Landry. And, I was actually surprised when they let go of Harold Landry, because Chad Brinker did 2 interviews in which he highlighted Harold Landry's effort down the stretch last year as a big part of the team, saying, hey, we weren't very good, but Jeffrey Simmons and Harold Landry were busting their asses at the end of the year. And then he got rid of Harold Landry. And Chad Brinker is such a strong leader that he can't even hold a press conference with the cameras and the recording devices on. The truth is, because, again, when you're unhappy with one person, you then try to find the exact opposite. They were unhappy with Vrabel, who, again, was about accountability and leadership. And look, I thought Vrabel needed to go too, but that doesn't mean that I thought that leadership didn't matter. I definitely thought it mattered. They have let Ryan Tannehill go, and Kevin Byard go, and Derrick Henry go, and Mike Vrabel go, and they have replaced it with 0 leadership. L'Jarius Sneed. And not all great players are great leaders. A.J. Brown is not a great leader. He is a great player. And leaders aren't just paid to lead, they're paid to produce. But the Titans have put such little emphasis on leadership that now, again, they're turning to the Disney films for advice on how to get leadership into their building. And I keep looking at Derrick Henry. And I keep listening to Derrick Henry. And I keep seeing Derrick Henry run for 87 yards on Sunday Night Football for a touchdown against the Bills. I watched Derrick Henry run for 1,900 yards last year for the Ravens. And I think, couldn't you have just kept the leader that you already had? The front page of the team yearbook last year, and I don't know where I got the team yearbook from. I don't know if I got it at the game. I don't know if I got it at a practice. I don't know if they sent it to my house. I don't know how I got it, but I got it. And it was on the coffee table in our house. You know who was on the cover of it? Jeffrey Simmons, not a leader. Will Levis, not a leader. DeAndre Hopkins, not a leader. L'Jarius Sneed, not a leader. And Calvin Ridley, I would venture to say, not a leader. Zero emphasis. Again, Tannehill, Henry, Byard, those guys were leaders. You have to have those kind of players. It matters. And so, again, Brian Callahan can do whatever he wants. He can sit there and he can say, we've come up with this new system. I was watching an episode of Dora the Explorer, and I thought they made a great point in watching that episode. So our team is now going to do what I saw on Dora the Explorer. And maybe he can see if that'll get him a leader one way or another. I keep thinking, you really want leadership? Build a time machine, go back to when you first got here, and go beg Derrick Henry to stay. Because those are the kind of players that you win with and that lead your team. But again, Vrabel was a leader, and they wanted to move on from that. So they just anointed Jeffrey Simmons king leader, even though he's got zero leadership qualities. Zero. Will Levis, king leader. Zero leadership qualities. As Dr. Phil would say, how's that working out for you? 615-737-1025 is our phone number on the program. 615-737-1025. Again, like Derek today was talking about, John Harbaugh did the same thing Callahan did. He moved guys around the locker room and, mixed offense and defense. Great. Did he get up and hold a press conference and talk about, I built 8 teams of different guys to challenge for prizes that we haven't even announced what they are because, yay! I highly doubt that. Pretty sure Harbaugh's a little bit more serious than that. All right, your phones. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. Let's talk about Nashville's best deal. That's right. This week, the Nashville best deal is Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon with a buy one, get one free admission. Beach Bend Park and Splash Lagoon, where parking, tubes, and sunscreen are always free. Get this great deal now at theGameNashville.com/deals while supplies last.
what does it mean to you to kind of, for the Ravens to go and, commit to you for even more than, was last year as well?
I'm just very grateful for this organization. Just like last year, coming off the season I had, I wasn't really happy, and I wanted to prove myself and just get an opportunity, and they gave me that opportunity, and I'm very appreciative of how much they value me to give me an extension, and I just want to show them how much it means to me, and how much this organization means to me by the way I work and what I do on the field.
I just want to thank the smart team that makes good decisions and wins a lot of football games. I just want to thank them for committing to me in a way that the dumb team who tried to get rid of me for an entire year never would have done. Again, Rand Carthon showed up as the general manager. I asked him at his introductory press conference how much he valued the running game, and he made that comment about not wanting to play Golden State Warriors football, and then proceeded to go to the combine and try to trade Derrick Henry. Then after that, they did not give Derrick Henry a contract extension. Instead, they tried to trade Derrick Henry at the deadline. Rand has since denied that, although the Ravens are willing to go on the record and tell you the exact terms of the deal. So I got a pretty good idea that it's probably true. And then Rand Carthon and company let Derrick Henry walk for nothing. That's what bad teams do. Good teams say, hey, there's a good player out there. Let's go get him. The Eagles did it with Saquon Barkley. The Packers did it with Josh Jacobs. And the Ravens did it with Derrick Henry. Phones are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Now Derrick is getting $15 million a year for the next 2 years, and we'll see what they end up doing as far as the year 33 is concerned for Derrick, which would be 2027, in which the Ravens could choose Derrick or not Derrick. Chris in Nashville says the Titans wasted 2 years of Derrick Henry. I wonder when you say wasted 2 years of Derrick Henry, if you mean they wasted the first 2 years where Derrick Henry sat the bench behind DeMarco Murray, or if they wasted 2018 where Matt LaFleur sat him on the bench and the great Mike Vrabel sat him on the bench for the first 12 games until he broke off a 99-yarder and had a 268-yard rushing performance against Jacksonville. Or if you're talking about the last 2 years in 2022 and 2023, where they had these terrible teams and Derrick Henry still made them watchable. Which one are you talking about when you say the 2 years they wasted for Derrick Henry? Again, look, the record with Emmitt Smith is the record, and I'm not taking anything away from Emmitt Smith or Walter Payton or anybody who is in that grouping. But I'm going to say this. If Derrick Henry had gotten to run behind those Cowboy offensive lines, Nate Newton, Flozell the Hotel Adams, Larry Allen, those guys, Moose Johnson in the backfield, Jay Novacek at tight end, Derrick might have 1 million rushing yards. I'm just serious. I also I'm reading some, I was not, today, I had a tree fall in last night's storm in the middle of my driveway, so I've been kind of busy this morning. Chris in Nashville texted to the Chase and Big Joe show at 9:20 a.m. and said, I'm embarrassed for Callahan. My office has team building exercises. The last one was building gingerbread houses. I am dead serious. I couldn't believe it. I mean, again, there are people that are like paid gobbles of money, paid handsomely in these positions, good positions that do things again, like Brian Callahan with, I tried to come up with 8 teams of team building bonding exercises because this is what to do in the NFL. I'm like, what? It's amazing. And there is no place that does it as much and as often as corporate America. Ray in Clarksville says, I think Derrick Henry can break Emmitt Smith's record. He can do it in 5 more years. Is there a way that he does it with the Ravens or comes back to Tennessee or any other team will pick him up? I think he can do it in 5 years. So in order for Derrick Henry to break the record, I think he has to have another 1,900-yard season this year because, again, he's 7,000 away. And Adam Vingan texted me and said it's like 1,500 yards a season for the next 5 seasons. And Derrick averages 1,400 yards a season. But, again, we have to keep in mind that the Titans kept him on the bench for the first 2 years. He'd have to have 1,900 probably this season and 1,500 the next season. Then I think he's got a shot. The Ravens will keep him at age 33 for 2027. He can deliver another 1,600 yards. Then the question has to be, can he get, does he have at 34 years old, does he have another 1,000 yard season? If I had to bet today, yes or no, is Derrick Henry going to break the record? I would bet no. Now, Derrick Henry will absolutely end up in the top 5. He's going to rush for 3,500 more yards. But I would bet no. But I wouldn't be stunned if he did it. Because even though 34 is dinosaur ages for a running back, Derrick Henry is different. The best players in sports are different. Ovechkin is different. Tom Brady, different. I looked up Willie Mays' stats earlier today because Willie Mays was different. Barry Bonds hit all those home runs after he turned 35. We can't really, bury that. Barry was probably different. I was talking to Kurt Schilling about this, about Barry one time, and Schilling was like, this guy never needed to take steroids. That's what everybody says, but Barry did take steroids. So put him out. Willie Mays, wins above replacement. That's the big stat that people in baseball kind of highlight. And Willie in his heyday was, 10, 11 wins above replacement per season, which is absolutely incredible. Willie Mays was 6.3 wins above replacement, which could win you an MVP award. Willie Mays at age 40. We know about Brady in his 40s. We know about very few guys can do that. Todd Gurley couldn't do it. Well, Todd Gurley's not one of the all-time greats. I'm not betting against Derrick Henry to do that because I think Derrick Henry's one of those guys. I think he's wired that way, just differently. And I hope he does it. As much as it'll hurt me to watch him do it in a Ravens uniform, and gosh, that would hurt. I hope he does it. He stands for all the right things. He treats people the right way. He has, again, he has been crapped on by the Titans so many times in his career. I hope he does it. Jeff said Derrick Henry's 1,900 yards last year is just more evidence of a sustained terrible Titans offensive line that the team has been incapable of fixing. They were unable to see when Henry was smacked in the backfield as soon as he was handed the ball that the line was the problem, not Derrick Henry. I wonder where the Ravens offensive line ranks. Well, they have Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, who's one of the best left tackles in the NFL. They have Tyler Linderbaum at center, who's one of the best centers in the NFL. And they're constantly turning in and out guards. The Ravens offensive line is solid. I also think it helps that he has Lamar Jackson. Now, the one thing that does drive me crazy is D Mace, was like, well, you wouldn't get the Derrick Henry in Baltimore that you would have had here. And I have a producer at Sirius who's a huge Giants fan. And last year during the year, I was like, how stupid is Joe Shane? We can't afford Saquon Barkley, so let's let him go to the Eagles where he will run right into the Hall of Fame. And he said, yeah, well, it's not like Saquon would have done all that with the Giants. Right. But when Derrick Henry goes to the Ravens and runs like that, when Saquon goes to the Eagles and runs like that, what it's telling you is that Derrick Henry is not the problem. Saquon Barkley is not the problem. You don't need to move on from Derrick Henry. You need to be better around Derrick Henry. That's what it's telling you. Again, I kept saying this offensive line is so bad. I think it's so bad. Dillard and Daly and Brewer and Duncan and these bums. And yet it was like, nope, we got to move on from Derrick. I mean, we just can't. We just can't. I mean, we just can't have Derrick Henry. One texter says, I think Coach Callahan's plan is at least interesting and it might be effective. Managing an army is a matter of managing your generals. Consider the differences between the vision and execution, motivation and control, leadership versus management. It's an effective way to keep everyone engaged to a higher standard, which keeps them under consistent evaluation, which, in my opinion, is necessary for a performance in a results-driven industry. Stop farting all over everyone's ideas just because it wasn't yours and embrace them trying something new. About Brian Callahan's Disney Plus decision to put 8 teams competing for prizes in which they don't know exist. Yeah, I'm going to tell you this right now. It's not about managing the Generals. That's not the issue here. It's about who the Generals are. That's the issue. Last year, you thought your Generals were DeAndre Hopkins on the cover of your team yearbook who was pouting in the middle of a game last year. You thought your Generals were Will Levis, who thought he was playing quarterback in a movie, not playing quarterback in the NFL, and Jeffrey Simmons, who's throwing punches in practice and chewing out buck. Give me a break. One texter says, if he breaks the record as a Baltimore Raven, he will go in the Hall of Fame as a Raven. That does not happen in football. That is baseball. Baseball, you go into the Hall of Fame with a team's cap. You do not do that in football. And I will say, though, if Derrick Henry breaks Emmitt Smith's record as a Baltimore Raven, he will be remembered as a Baltimore Raven. The same way that Drew Brees is remembered as a New Orleans Saint, not as a San Diego Charger. And that's a shame. But that's just a fact. Rodney Harrison is remembered as a New England Patriot, not as a San Diego Charger. Oh, man. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
spent a lot of meeting time wise, where we went wrong last year. We did the self-scout portion of it, the technique of things, but it's just the emphasis of it, making guys aware. At some point I can take you guys through, now probably isn't the perfect time for it, but just how we've set up the off-season program. I think guys have really bought into it. You can maybe ask them a few more questions, and maybe they'll give you some more insight. But how we set it up, we divided our team into competitive teams. We have 8 teams now that compete daily, which you guys have seen some of the stuff on social media, just post-practice competitions. There's points on the line for everything we do. So there's an emphasis daily, and there's negative points. So to your point, Paul, about how do you teach it? Well, if you jump off sides in a group drill, those are negative points for your team, and so it's emphasized every day. We look at it, we talk about it. It's on our players' forefront of their minds, so every time we step in the building. So those are the things we have to get better at for sure, on top of the scheme. But I'm excited about what we've done and how we've done it, and we'll see if it pays off.
There you go. That's Brian Callahan's new scheme, his new idea. This is what we're going to do. We are going to go out there and we are going to divide up our team, and we're going to have points and systems and everything. It's going to be fun. And I'm like, these are millionaires. This is the NFL. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Fitz, we start there. When you hear that, Brian Callahan thought long and hard about the mistakes the teams made last year, and that is the way he's going to fix it. What do you think?
I guess the onus, this is the first time I've heard that. All right. So as I'm listening to that, I'm thinking your decision to make as a coach to create the culture you need to create in year 2 is to create more sense of competition. Like there isn't enough of that from the minute you get in. So I don't know, man. That feels very, all of that feels like something a high school coach does more than an NFL coach. Like it feels a little surprising to me. At some point, Callahan's got to figure out what is the landmark saying that he brings to an organization. And competition certainly isn't a new message. That just feels like a weird way to deliver that message. And look, I'm a long time believer that every type of locker room is different. Some locker rooms are big on, we're all professionals. Some locker rooms are young and having fun. I can't imagine a locker room that needs a point system that's given or taken away every day based on what they do to be motivated. It feels weird to me. It feels very cheesy.
So I compared it to like an elementary school day camp where, lunch may or may not be served. I mean, to me, I said this yesterday, Fitz, when it came to Callahan, and I asked, can he actually change? Can he hold people accountable? Can he not be optimistic that the best case scenario is going to work out all the time? Because that absolutely doomed him in year 1. I hear this and it makes me think the answer is no. Am I wrong for that?
I think it's tough, man. Like, cause ultimately, look, full transparency. I'm a fan of the Raiders. We all know that. And Pete Carroll comes in every day and says, we're going to compete in everything we do. And I've talked to a couple of guys that I think are close. I'm close to in that locker room. And they've talked about how, what that means. Cause I've asked the question, what does competition mean? And competition means that he's the type of person that he just brings that competition out in everything that they do somehow, some way. I haven't heard anything about a point scoring system. And yeah, it just feels very elementary, I think is probably a good way to put it. And I don't know that that's the way that you put your mark on an organization. Like, just think about the great coaches in the NFL, like to truly landmark the coaches that we all seem to respect all the time. And most of them, I almost feel like you can put their caricature down in 2 or 3 sentences of who they are organizationally and why it works. And I just don't know that feels like any of that. It just, it feels lost. It feels like you're grasping at straws. And I hate saying that going into year 2, but like, I don't know. I think if you really want to compete, you want to create a competitive culture that comes from winning football games, and bringing in people that are wired to compete with you at everything that you ever do in any way, shape, or form.
Jason Fitz is with us on the program. Callahan, speaking of competition, said that they're splitting the reps at OTAs. Titans Twitter decided that meant that it's Levis versus Ward, period, and they're not happy about that. I think Callahan's actually more likely to start Brandon Allen at quarterback than he would Will Levis. That's just my personal opinion. But I do ask you this. With Denver on the road week 1, with a new left tackle, with a center coming back from injury who probably won't be around for much of training camp, a new right guard and a new right tackle in one of the hardest places to play in the NFL, Fitz, would it not be a good idea to sit Cam Ward the first couple of weeks, Denver week 1, the Rams week 2, and let Brandon Allen or let Will Levis get the teeth kicked in, let the offensive line come together, and then play Cam? We've seen plenty of time, including Drake May last year, where a team has a young quarterback, sits for the first month or two, or I'm just asking for the first 2 games. Is it too crazy to ask for that?
No, look, I think in my mind, bringing your future franchise quarterback along slowly is always the right play. And look at Jaden Daniels, who obviously was not brought along slowly in the minds of some. But then I will say, go back and watch the film of the first month of his games, and even look at the way we were talking about him. And people were literally laughing at that offense with Cliff Kingsbury in the first month, challenging whether or not Jaden Daniels was even going to try and throw the ball forward. In fact, if you look at his pass splits in the first month, most of his passes were at or behind the line of scrimmage at an alarming rate, because Cliff Kingsbury knew, hey, we're playing this kid, but we're not really playing him. Like, we're going to wait until midseason to start opening up the offense, which is what happened with Jaden Daniels. I think the best approach for your future franchise, for if you really want to bring Cam Ward along the right way, then you put Cam Ward in when he's good and ready, and not a second too soon for that. So, I don't think there's a battle, and there shouldn't be a battle. I also think that you're sort of stuck organizationally, because he needs every rep right now. He needs to get comfortable. The team needs every rep right now in front of him. All of these reps have to matter for a team that's going to try and get some level of continuity. But the fact is, no, if I ran the Titans right now, if I was the GM of the Tennessee Titans, my edict to my coaching staff would be, look, Cam Ward's going to be here long before every one of you will be. I believe in Cam Ward. He's our number 1 pick. So whatever you got to do to bring him along the right way, I don't care about a win week 1, week 2, week 3. I care about making sure that when my quarterback gets on the field, he has the opportunity to be as successful as possible. And I care that you're not ruining him. Like, this is just that moment where great teams, or great quarterbacks, I should say, aren't ruined by their organization in the beginning. And I will always maintain that Trevor Lawrence, in part, has never really lived up to it, because the Jags have done everything they can to ruin the guy from day one. I don't want the Titans to do that to Cam Ward. So that means having a game plan that is far, far bigger than week 1 against the Broncos. Week 1 no longer matters against the Broncos. If you're a Titans fan today, the only thing that matters is Cam Ward, an elite-looking quarterback, by week 13, 14, 15, 16.
Fitz, last one for you. The tush push stays, which I'm fine with. I mean, I do understand that, like, a quarterback could break his neck doing it. And flag football is in for the Olympics in 2028 for NFL players, and I couldn't give 2 poops about that. Do you care about the flag football and Roger Goodell and his whole international push and all of that?
I'll just credit Charles Robinson, because I didn't care until we did inside coverage this week, and Charles spent a long time talking about the fact that the league is so passionate about the growth of the game internationally, and players are passionate about the monetary opportunities that came for people like Kobe when they were able to play in places like China. This is about the Patrick Mahomes of the world being able to play without a helmet on, which is a huge marketing opportunity for him. And frankly, the NFL, according to C-Rob, it really opened my eyes. The NFL looked at the NBA and said, look, all you need to play basketball all around the world is just a hoop and a ball. So if you're the NFL and you really want to grow globally, additionally to the 1 game a week that we're going to end up with, I think we'll end up with 18 international games a year in the next CBA. But in addition to that, you've got to find a way to grow your game participation globally. I do believe that the NFL is going to end up investing massively in flag football to make that matter. So even though it's not, I don't think it's really for NFL fans necessarily. It's a totally different game, but the NFL is going to use it to market their players, to market their game. I think the NFL is going to legitimately be investing in flag football at an alarming rate for the next 10 years.
Yeah, but Jordan and Pippen and Barkley and Magic and Bird, they didn't go to Barcelona and play 3-on-3. Like, they played real basketball. This idea that, like, this is going to be like the dream team and the global phenomenon, I don't buy. And secondly, I don't care personally. And I know the owners don't care what I care about, but I don't care about the international growth of the NFL. I just don't. I see what they're doing. I just think it's a little overrated.
C-Rob said that the league is so passionate about it, the owners are, that they are comfortable with the risk of injury that comes with it, because to them, even if a star player is lost to injury by playing in the Olympics, it's worth it for the growth of what it means to the sport. That's how much they believe it's going to make an impact in Egypt and India and China and all these places that they want to be able to market their game to eventually. I'm with you. It's much different than the dream team. I just think that this is inevitable with the NFL. Like, I'd be pretty stunned if the NFL isn't investing in flag football leagues that are growing across America. But I don't think the NFL audience in America is really they're okay with the fact that you don't care. They don't need you to care. They need random people that would never consider football to care, that live in Beijing and then watch it and say, man, that was so cool. I'm going to pick up a football. And just like all you need is a ball in a hoop, if you're not tackling, all you need is a ball in a yard and you can play flag football.
Jason Fitz, Yahoo Sports, Fox Sports Radio. Great stuff. As always, we'll talk soon, Fitz.
Appreciate you, brother. Thanks.
Yep. Jason Fitz on our program. Okay. I have got to talk about our midday show, DVD, because I think they owe me and you an apology. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. And I have a bone to pick with our midday show DVD with hosts Adam Vingan, Derek Mason, and Willie Donick. I believe they owe me and you an apology. And here's why I think they owe me and you an apology. Because yesterday, Brian Callahan got up in front of the media and he was asked about L'Jarius Sneed, and he said that L'Jarius Sneed is still recovering from the quad and knee injuries that he has been managing. And they took the cheese and apparently are still taking the cheese on L'Jarius Sneed's knee and quad. I have to believe at this point in time, most people, even the people that said, let Rand cook, even the people that ignored the fact that Minnesota pulled their offer when it came to L'Jarius Sneed because the medicals were so bad, even though the fact that we played cuts, Carrington Harrison, who does afternoon radio in Kansas City, was saying before Sneed got traded that the knees are worse than you think and he should just take the money and not try to negotiate for more. And you said, what's he know? I think even most of you have realized, yeah, this L'Jarius Sneed thing is a problem. If you'll remember last year, L'Jarius Sneed bruised his quad. But it goes back even further than that. It goes back to when the Titans were the only team in the NFL that would trade for L'Jarius Sneed. And they had L'Jarius Sneed on the show. And to their credit, they asked, Caroline was doing the show at that point, they asked Sneed about the knees. And Sneed said, L'Jarius Sneed's knees are fine. Titan fans, you don't have anything to worry about with L'Jarius Sneed's knees. They, on the midday show, said that he would be fine. He'll be fine because he didn't miss games in Kansas City, even though the rest of the league was skeptical. They insisted that last year, because the Titans said it was a quad injury, that it had to be a quad injury. And in December of last year, they were saying there's no chance the Titans could be lying about this. So let's go through the Sneed timeline. On October 13th of 2024, L'Jarius Sneed played 69 of a possible 70 snaps versus the Indianapolis Colts, in which he made the final Tennessee Titans tackle of the game with 22 seconds to go. I have actually watched the film of that play, and if anybody's quad got hit by a helmet, it was the Indianapolis player getting hit by L'Jarius Sneed's helmet. But again, he played 69 of a possible 70 snaps and made the last tackle with 22 seconds to go. Then it was announced that L'Jarius Sneed would be out with a quad bruise, in which it was reported that he took a helmet to the quad, suffered in the game. And I didn't complain about that at first because I said, hey, maybe they're telling the truth. I don't know. Then he missed one game. Then he missed 2 games. Then he missed 3 games. Then Brian Callahan held a press conference where he was asked on Monday if Sneed was going to be able to play, and he said no. And I thought, well, wait a minute, hold on. Quad bruise? And he's out? And on November 7th, almost a month after the helmet to the quad, I said, okay, what gives? I made the joke. Was it a Roman battle helmet with a spike at the top of it that penetrated L'Jarius Sneed's quad? Then on November 23rd, Brian Callahan announced that Sneed would be going on IR with a quad strain and a quad bruise. So they already lied about the injury because they said it was just a bruise from a helmet to the quad. And now they're saying, well, it was actually a quad strain and a quad bruise. And they were putting him on IR because it just wasn't getting better. Darn. Of course, at this point, I'm done believing the Titans and their bull crap, but not the midday show. They defended the Titans, and they said, you can't get on the Titans, Jared. It's a quad, not the knee. Take that, even though the quad is connected to the knee. Then, unbeknownst of all of us at the time, after L'Jarius Sneed was involved, allegedly, in shooting up a car dealership in Houston, Sneed showed up back in the locker room in December and told everyone he had a bone marrow injection and was in a brace 6 weeks after he said that he had the bone marrow injection. I talked to a doctor who works on NFL players who said, quote, you wouldn't be in a brace for 6 weeks from an injection. So I knew that was bullcrap. Well, it's the quad. He had the injection, and that's why he's got the brace, and that's why he's got the... And again, a doctor who works on NFL players said you wouldn't be in a brace for that. Told me what is probably more likely is L'Jarius Sneed had a cartilage surgery on his knee called OATS, O-A-T-S, and that it was probably the knee. That's what that doctor told me. Yesterday, Derek yelled at me. He said, oh, no. You didn't talk to the doctor who diagnosed L'Jarius Sneed. Right. But if you talk to a dentist and you said, yeah, I had a cavity, and they gave you an edema, he would say, probably not what we would do for a cavity. I think this is kind of the same. And here we are now, 220 days after L'Jarius Sneed had, as the Titans said, a helmet to the quad, and Brian Callahan says he is still recovering from the helmet to the quad on October 13th. By the way, had L'Jarius Sneed torn the quad off the bone, he should be healed by now. And yet, the midday show will not back down. They will not admit, we took the cheese. We listened to the Titans. We shouldn't have listened to the Titans. The Titans, who are notorious for lying about everything, may have lied this time. No. They say that because the Titans said it was the quad, again, which is connected to the knee, then it must be the quad. Common sense, medical professionals, be damned. They don't know what they're talking about. The Titans said it was a quad. It was a quad. Let Rand cook. I am incredibly disappointed. I know those guys. I know them very well. I've known all three for 10 years. I know the educations they received, and I know they're smarter than this. And I know you all are smarter than that. The Titans lied about L'Jarius Sneed. They've already admitted to one lie when they initially said it was a quad bruise, and then Brian Callahan came out and said it was a quad strain and a quad bruise. So why would you just assume that they were done lying at that point? My guess is they knew. And remember, at the time, Rand Carthon was the general manager. He was the one that made the trade for Sneed. When they were all working together, my guess is they knew that after they gave Sneed $50 million, and we talked about his knees nonstop, that if his knees were the issue, which failed him 5 games into a $50 million guaranteed contract, they would look like complete and total dopes. Completely incompetent. So they lied. They said it was the quad. Maybe Sneed did get that injection. I don't know. But again, like a doctor, somebody who went to school, somebody who makes a bunch of money, who works on NFL players, told me, you wouldn't be in a brace 6 weeks after having an injection in the quad. But not the midday show. They think it's all on the up and up. And I think even they're smarter than that. So I think they owe me an apology after they constantly pushed back. And I think they owe you an apology. Because, again, They should know better than to just take the Titans' word for it. Come on now. 615-737-1025, which is the phone number, 615-737-1025. And there is a reality that needs to be addressed when it comes to the Titans and L'Jarius Sneed, and we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
Sleeve rehab, are you talking knee, are you talking quad, are you talking both, and where is he in terms of full participation?
I mean, it's both. I mean, the knee is something that you manage all the time. And then, for the quad injuries, it has taken some time to rehab from. So those things are still kind of ongoing, simultaneously. It's all part of the process for him. But he's in a great place. I'm excited about where he's at. He's progressing as expected.
There you go. Progressing as expected, Brian Callahan said, even though they said last year, oh no, it was a knee, bruise, quad injury, so on and so forth. I mean, give me a break. Just give me a break. Adam Vingan texted me, and he said, to be fair, in all caps, to be fair, I acknowledged yesterday that I could be wrong. So I did not hear that part. All I heard was the three of them yesterday, Derek yelling, you didn't talk to the doctor when it came to, you didn't talk to the doctor who examined L'Jarius Sneed. And Derek also thinks I have to get a second opinion because, again, I had the one doctor. I took something that TD reported about Sneed wearing a brace in the locker room, saying that he had gotten the bone marrow injection or the bone injection 6 weeks prior. I sent that. I screenshotted that and sent that to a doctor who works on NFL players who, again, the reply was, you wouldn't be in a brace for 6 weeks if it was a quad. You wouldn't be. You would not be for an injection 6 weeks. You just wouldn't. That wouldn't be the case. And I understand that me and other media people don't know that, but this guy knows it. And Derek's still saying, well, he doesn't know. Actually, I think he does. And you can't talk to the doctor because, again, that's against the law. But, hey, maybe the Titans really got it figured out. Here's the deal. Okay, when it comes to the Titans and L'Jarius Sneed, and I'm just being honest here, let's call it like it is. Even if you wanted to believe that I was wrong last year, let's just admit now. The Chiefs knew L'Jarius Sneed was a ticking time bomb. Whether it was the knee, whether it was the person, they knew. And they were not going to commit long-term to L'Jarius Sneed. The rest of the league was not going to commit to Sneed. Minnesota pulled their offer when they found out the details about his knee. And Rand Carthon was the only one who was incompetent enough to do it. And I guess Chad Brinker wasn't important enough or couldn't convince Rand, even though he was technically the president of football operations at the time, to not do it. In fact, he negotiated the trade, which was a very bad trade for the Titans. And they're going to have to pay Sneed for this upcoming season unless the commissioner suspends him. But to expect that L'Jarius Sneed is going to help the Titans or is going to start for the Titans or anything like that at this point is just foolish. It was a mistake. They lit a third-round draft pick and $50 million in cash on fire. I saw while I was on vacation, PK put out a report that the tariffs may have an impact on Nissan Stadium. The Titans are responsible for the overruns there. That's why I don't think it's crazy that the Titans were given a budget of what they could spend on their football team, and that was why they felt the need to have to take Cam Ward. Let's go to our phones, which is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. Daryl is up next here on our program. Daryl, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared. I remember this AI talked to you about these new innovative tools that other teams didn't have. He inferred quite a bit that, we're just a smarter organization now. We're not going to make the dumb mistakes of the past because we went into the business about AI, curing cancer and all that crap. But I don't know how Brinker has gone unscathed with all these stupid trades and signings and draft picks while Rand rightfully got fired. How did Brinker not get fired? He's going to get fired at the end of the year because they're going to have a bad year. This left tackle is going to turn out to be a joke. The quarterback is going to get killed. I predict
easy on the left tackle. I agree that the quarterback's going to get killed, but I don't think the left tackle sucks that bad. But I hear what you're saying.
Irrespective, Brinker went on the air and publicly announced, inferred anyway, we are smarter than the other guys. And he's turned out to be not quite as smart as the other guys. So I think it'll be time for Brinker to go at the end of the year. He's going to wear out his welcome. But I'm just flabbergasted that he's been unscathed through all this crap.
Yeah, I don't know what Amy sees in him. And I mean this with all due respect. with Brinker. I'm not coming out and saying like, Brinker's a moron but I am saying that he's not qualified for this job. And not one person over there has been able to convince me why Chad Brinker is qualified, why he was deserving of a promotion. I asked him, because he did do that podcast in which he basically said on the podcast, Rand is the greatest you will see. Our analytics are the greatest you will see. Brian Callahan is the greatest you will see. The cohesion between us and Anthony Robinson is incredible. You will see. And in turn, Rand got fired. Brinker got promoted. The team was the worst in the NFL. Callahan, again, jury's out, but it ain't looking good. And Brinker himself fired Anthony Robinson. I remember that podcast specifically. And of course, we played the crap out of that AI cancer curing cut because it was so absurd, so absurd. So we played that cut a bunch. But the podcast in general, I remember, the For You tab, I think, had just become a thing on Twitter. And I see on the For You tab a bunch of Titan fans saying, you've got to hear this Titan podcast with Chad Brinker. Again, at this point, they've promoted Chad Brinker to president of football operations. They've promoted Rand to vice president, said he's in charge of the roster. I don't know organizations where vice president outranks president. So I don't even know who does what at this point. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to listen to this podcast. People on Twitter are saying that, hey, this thing is legit and these guys are, great. And let me hear it and let me see. So I went on a long walk. This was the Saturday before I went to Las Vegas for the Super Bowl between San Francisco and Kansas City. And so I went on a long walk, the kind of walks you can go on in the middle of Saturday when you don't have any dogs and you don't have a kid and you don't have any of that stuff. I went on a long walk and I listened to the podcast. I even texted somebody from the Titans and said, this was the biggest load of bullcrap I've ever listened to in my life. And I listened to this podcast and the caller's right. Brinker was just bragging about Rand and how great he was and just bragging about how they're smarter in their analytics department and everything he learned in Green Bay and Anthony Robinson. And you'll see, you don't understand. And all three of the people there, Mike Keith and Dave McGinnis and Rhett Bryan and the hired gun, Ramon Foster, they're just sitting there just yapping it up. Just everything Brinker's, oh my God, this is great. I'm like, I don't even know what this guy does. What does he do? And so for the season to go as poorly as it did, and for Brinker to have been on record saying what he said at that time, and for him to be the one who, again, is promoted into a higher position of power, it's never made any sense to me. But again, it's the Titans. And when you have an option, and there's the smart option, the controversial option, or just the flat-out incompetent option, the Titans, over the last 4 or 5 years, have always chosen the incompetent option. Every time. Whether it's letting Derrick Henry walk for nothing, or whether it's, again, making Rand Carthon the chief in charge and punting on Mike Vrabel. Every time. So I don't have a lot of hope. One texter was talking about Mike Borgonzi and was saying that between the draft and bringing in Tyler Lockett, I feel like Borgonzi is putting an emphasis on leadership. Rand didn't have a philosophy when it came to team building. I'm optimistic with this new regime. What about the draft? Well, hey, the draft is I'm really optimistic about the draft. Well, we haven't seen any of these players play. I mean, yeah, it's easy to look at Ola Adeni without a shirt, or Ola Adeni. That's not his name. Who's Ola Adeni? Ola Adeni was on the team when Vrabel coached. Femi the second round pick, Femi Oladejo. It's easy to look at him without it saying, look at him. I mean, he's jacked. Can he rush the quarterback? Because he had 4.5 sacks in college last year. I'm not here to tell you the draft class stinks or that it's 2016 or 2019? I'm not here to tell you that because I don't know. But too many of you are pretending like, oh, no, this draft class is incredible. Everybody thinks their draft class is incredible. Everybody. Very few teams will actually end up with incredible draft classes. Skyler said Snead got the contract and he's not trying to play for this awful team. I heard that there were some locker room issues last season when it came to Snead playing on a bad team. I heard it. Don't know if it's true, but that was kind of the rumor. 615-737-1025. Jordan Schultz sent me a tweet. Reed, I don't know if you've seen this. Like, maybe this is just a thing that everybody knows, and Reed and Schultz is one of the people reporting it, or they're all reporting it, or he's reporting it. But apparently the Titans have agreed to a 4-year, $48.75 million fully guaranteed contract with Cam Ward, $32.1 million in signing bonus.
Run those numbers again.
4 years, 48
million.
Yeah, 4 years, 49, basically, with 32 signing. But again, all the stuff slotted. Who cares?
Yeah.
That is not a back in the day.
I'll wait.
I remember
that coming from Schultz. I'll wait for PK to confirm it.
Yeah, they're best buddies. Okay, the Titans have put out a video of Cam Ward signing his contract. Again, I don't know, to be excited about, oh my God, he signed his contract. This is not 2006 where it was like, man, getting these contracts signed was something. Now it's all slotted. Who cares? 615-737-1025, which is our phone number. More your phone, 615-737-1025. So there is something PK is demanding from the Titans. Speaking of PK, that for a Hall of Fame voter, I think this gobbledygook goes into the Hall of Fame of stupid. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5 The Game.
Some of those numbers for Dan Moore last year weren't necessarily great in terms of pass blocking. What do you feel like, what gave you guys the confidence that you guys went after him right away and gave him a healthy contract? What's the confidence there that he is the guy, kind of the answer at left tackle?
Yeah, I think you watch all those things. You watch the sacks they give up, you watch the pressures they give up, you watch penalties, and you try to determine what's fixable and maybe what isn't, and what you're okay with. And there's things that I think he can be corrected in technique wise that are going to him a lot. There's some things that, sometimes you just get beat by good players, which the AFC North has a few of them. And we'll see a few of them ourselves. And so there's that part of it. And how can you help in those situations schematically? But yeah, you watch all of it, and you have to go through and you see what's fixable and what maybe isn't fixable, but you can help with the process of it. So there's no perfect player. They're all going to have things that they got to get better at. And we felt really comfortable with Dan, and he's been fantastic since he's been here in that regard. So excited to have him.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan talking about the left tackle, Dan Moore. So I have to get to this take from Paul Kaharski, because of all the things Paul said, again, he's a Hall of Fame voter. He should know how the NFL works. And I heard him today, on his high horse about the offensive line. He should be happy that he finally got to talk to Dan Moore. But he was talking about the offensive line, and he has decided unequivocally that he will not accept the Titans offensive line, which will have a new left tackle, Dan Moore, a new right guard, Kevin Zeitler, a new right tackle, J.C. Latham, and an injured center, Lloyd Cushenberry, who knows when he'll be ready to come back. That he does not want any time for them to come together, and they better be ready by week 1 at Denver. Here's what PK said.
You don't want it to be a disaster
No.
for him personally. You could see it being a disaster for the team. It's a tough start at altitude, a lot of new guys, all of that. The two things I'd say about that game is no excuses for the offensive line in terms of cohesion and all of that, which is a big theme for me.
Yep.
They need to be good out of the gate. And, no disastrous start for Cam like you got from Levis last year on the road.
Okay. I can roll with the, hey, no disastrous start where you hand the ball and the game to the other team. That I don't have a problem with. But this idea of no time for the offensive line to come together, they better be ready by week 1 for a Hall of Fame voter is a Hall of Fame level stupid take. That's not how the NFL works. And anybody whose job is based on covering the NFL should know that. This offensive line is going to be a work in progress. Again, the league is different than it was 20 years ago. They don't have two-a-days with practices and pads anymore. They get to training camp. You don't wear a pad until you get to training camp. Then you get to training camp. You spend the first couple of days in the shells, and then you only get a certain number of padded practices. Then you get 3 preseason games, not 4. And nobody plays in the preseason anymore, especially the Titans. So you're going to expect the Titans with, 8 padded practices with a center who is coming off of a torn Achilles to be ready to go and ready and locked in to protect a quarterback by week 1 on the road in one of the most hostile environments in the NFL at altitude, where you're going to have to go to the silent count. That's not how the NFL works. That is an unreasonable expectation for any offensive line in the NFL, much less the Titans. That is an absolutely unreasonable expectation. So, with very little real practice, because again, offensive, defensive linemen, if you're not wearing pads, it's not practice. It's just technique work. It's just a walkthrough, going over the scheme. That's what it is. All right, you block him, you block him, you block him, you block him. All right, let's go through it. 58, hike. That's it. It's not pushing, shoving, pulling. It's none of that. The only way you get in shape in the NFL is to play football. So if Paul wants this, the only way I could see this happening is if the Titans decided that they wanted to be the one team out of 32. And again, if I own the team and my head coach came up to me and said, hey, I am totally for the idea of playing everybody, all of my offensive linemen in the preseason for the most part, I wouldn't push back against it as an owner because I'm not one of these people that says, well, what if Johnny Joe gets hurt? Because I don't believe you play football scared. I mean, they're going to let him play in the Olympics, so might as well let him play in the preseason. But unless the Titans decide we're going to be the one team that plays our offensive line at all 3 preseason games, and we're going to play them, a half in the first game, a full game in the second game, and 3/4 in the third game, there's no shot, zero, that offensive line is going to be in shape week 1. Nobody's offensive line is going to be in shape week 1. Your offensive line is going to be playing at altitude, which is going to make it even harder. 2, that your offensive line is going to be a cohesive unit because, once again, they haven't played together. The left tackle has never played next to the left guard. The right guard has never played next to the center, and the right guard has never played next to the right tackle. That does not happen on day 1 where, hey, I got you, you got me. You do not just all of a sudden out of nowhere develop chemistry with people on the first day. That would be like starting a new job, being told, here's the microphone, go take us to number 1. Well, hold on. These things take time. As somebody who has taken people to number 1, I'll tell you, it takes time. It takes time. And you may not be patient because the offensive line has been a disaster for the last 3 years. It has been a train wreck. It has been abysmal with bad coaching from Mike Vrabel and his cronies. And last year with PT and those bozos out there. But that doesn't change the reality that, well, they spent money in the offseason, so now everybody should be ready by week 1. That's not how this league works. So just expect that it's going to take some time during the season for the all there. Again, Paul's saying they need to be ready week 1. Well, I'm just going to tell you they're not going to be ready week 1. So now what do you do? That's the better question. You're going up against all pros. Benito, Allen, on the road at altitude. And again, Denver is one of the hardest places to play. You will have to be on the silent count. So now what do you not? Let's just make up this unfathomable. Again, I say unfathomable in a good way. Usually there's negative connotations there. But let's come up with this unrealistic idea and let's just say it's going to work. Well, good luck. 615-737-1025. More of your phones on the Titans. We'll get to that. 615-737-1025. Still in a company, 1025. 106 again. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Nobody wants to deal with a plumbing, HVAC, or electrical emergency. Nobody. And most of the time, you do not know what it will cost or if it will get fixed correctly or if someone is just trying to sell you something that you do not need. Well, you don't have to worry about that when you call Hiller. And again, I use Hiller at my home. You will not have to worry about that because their experts are going to solve your problems and they're going to solve them quickly. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, where the price you're told is the price you will actually pay with no hidden fees and no surprises on your bill. It's very easy. Just book online right now by visiting happyhiller.com. That's the exact way that I book is by going to happyhiller.com. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Hat Fix Truck today.
would Cam going into that need to beat out the other three quarterbacks that are on the roster? Or are you kind of in a spot where Cam needs to have maybe just enough of a grip on what's going on in your system to have confidence in him to draw that first start?
Yeah, I think there's so much work to be done between now and then, particularly for him. So many things that you have to learn as a young quarterback. So I don't get too far down that road personally with him. We're focused on the next day really at this point. Trying to get him up to speed as fast as possible and get him ready so he can go compete for a job. And that's ultimately where it all lands right now. So not going to make too many proclamations about September here in May. So feel good about where we're at and the work he's put in, and we'll get there when we get there.
Well done by Brian Callahan to avoid saying really anything there. But boy, Titan fans got mad about that. About Cam Ward has to earn the job. What do you mean? And I said, look, I think I would sit Cam Ward the first game at Denver and maybe the second game against the Rams. And I would do it because, once again, it is not about Cam necessarily, but the offensive line is going to need a couple of weeks to gel. Denver is going to be a very tough start for him. Silent count on the road, very hostile environment. Denver is one of two places in the NFL, Seattle is the other, where the fans absolutely make a difference. So let's stick Brandon Allen out there, stick Will Levis out there, and, move on to Indianapolis week 3. Put Cam out there if he's ready. And these fans on Twitter are like, you're an idiot, Jared. You've never seen Cam take a snap in the National Football League. He hasn't taken a snap in a practice, like a real snap in a real practice where he's wearing a helmet. Has not taken a snap in a game, a preseason game. If you think that it is crazy that he may not be ready week 1 or that it may not be in his best interest to go out there week 1, then you're just an 8-year-old. You're just sitting there saying, I want my quarterback and I want it now. And I just don't believe in that. Let's go to your phones. Kenny has been waiting patiently and is up next here on the program. Kenny, thank you for calling. Go ahead.
Hey, Jared, I think that you're overlooking something when you say that the offensive line can't be ready by week 1. You have completely forgotten about the 4 H's. Those offensive line to know each other's heartbreak. And once you know somebody's heartbreak, you can stop any left tackle in the or any defensive end in the NFL.
I'm going to say that that's a joke, Kenny. Thank you for your call. I'm going to assume that's a joke. Yesterday to the Brian Callahan, let's get around the campfire and sing Kumbaya at OTAs, and that will solve all of our problems. But if you're not joking, then I am incredibly disappointed. One texter says that Jared from Spring Hill says, PK, talking about Paul Kaharski, PK is a big fan of this offseason team building crap, so maybe he believes this offseason accountability point system can propel the offensive line into cohesion and into comprehension. So I did not hear PK say that he's for the team building. Remember the Titans Disney Plus stuff? I'd be shocked if he actually was. And I did listen to some of that show today. I would be shocked. I'm shocked. Reed, did you hear it?
I didn't hear it, but he and I had a text exchange yesterday that would lead me to believe that he is on board with them doing something different. And he thinks at some point this is going to lead to some type of, not necessarily a reward system, but these guys who are making these mistakes and getting these negative points are going to have to run. And then I was going back and forth with him like, has running laps ever stopped a millionaire offensive lineman from jumping off sides? And will it ever in the future? So, and that was kind of the end of the conversation that we had. But the exchange that we had privately kind of leads me to believe that he's on board, maybe not necessarily with this, but them trying something different.
As somebody who's known PK longer than I have, does that disappoint you?
Yes, it disappoints me because in another life, in another building in this town, had we been forced to sit down and share our heartbreaks and hopes with our colleagues, he would have got up and walked out the door. But it's okay. It's okay for multimillionaire professional athletes for some reason.
I don't understand this. Again, I know that Paul questions when I say that Floyd said something, he questions it. I mean, that was like people last year in the text line that were saying, you don't understand what Floyd meant when he told you the right tackle story. And I'm like, there were two people in the room, me and him. And I know what he said. I heard it. I know what it was. And I know what he meant. And so I'm just going to tell you this. Floyd told me that players only respond to two things: money and playing time. It's the only currency they understand. You can yell at them. You can run them. You can kick them out of meetings. You can kick them out of practice. The only two things they care about are money and playing time. That's it. And doesn't that kind of make sense? Again, if you go up to Tony Pollard and you say, Tony Pollard, your team lost the competition this week, so you owe me 15 laps at voluntary practice, can't he just say, no thanks? Voluntary practice? No, thank you. I'm out. Can't he just say that? You go up to Tony Pollard and you say, Tony Pollard, I'm fining you $250,000. And with this conduct detrimental to the team, I'm voiding your guaranteed money. You think he'd care about it now? You see the difference? Hey, Tony Pollard, I'm sitting you on the bench, and I'm going to play somebody else. Again, players understand two things: money and playing time. The fact that Paul thinks that them getting around in a circle and singing Kumbaya is going to change anything, is going to make this team more accountable, is a joke. Like, that is a joke. If that is in fact how he feels, which it sounds like, if that is the way he feels, then that is the way he feels. Chad Withrow from Outkick. Joe is in New York with The Athletic, so Chad moves up to Wednesday. He will join us next. Home and Company, 105 The Game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. And so yesterday I sat down at 9:30 and I listened to the Brian Callahan press conference, and I was taking notes, and I heard him talk about splitting reps at the quarterback position, and I knew people were going to get worked up about that. But the one thing I could not get over was when I heard Brian Callahan talking about these 8 teams that they now have during the offseason program, 8 teams of about 10 to 12 guys each, in which Paul asked the question about how they're going to correct mistakes like turnovers and penalties. And he said, well, we've got this new point system where if you jump off sides, your team loses points. You know, we've got a tug of war that we're playing, and your team can win or lose points. We've got, and I thought to myself, oh my God, this is a clown show. I really wondered after watching Brian Callahan last year in training camp, and it'll be fine. Will Levis throws an interception on the first pass of the 2-minute drill against the Seattle Seahawks. Instead of what the old school coaches would do, blow the whistle and say, do it again, he said, it's fine. When asked about Calvin Ridley saying he wasn't running hard enough, Brian Callahan said it was hot outside. When Jeffrey Simmons threw punches in practice and went after Buck Rising, he said, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. He said, oh, we'll figure it out at right tackle. He didn't. I wondered, could Brian Callahan change and get an accountability bone in his body? And this is his answer. A page out of Coach Herman Boone from Remember the Titans book. The 4 H's. They want you to know what are your heroes, your hopes, your heartbreaks, and your history. I remembered the 4 H's. Chad Withrow joins us a couple days early from Outkick, presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Chad, we start there. Your reaction. Do you like it? Do you hate it? Do you love it? What do you think of Brian Callahan's new incentives during the offseason program?
Well, first off, don't disparage the great Herman Boone by comparing Brian Callahan to him. I'd kill for Herman Boone as coach of the Tennessee Titans right now. Hell, I'd kill for Denzel Washington as Herman Boone coaching the Tennessee Titans right now over that. No, this is a very high school Harry type thing, very common with high school football programs. It's the first time that myself as the coach of a 9U travel softball team that I feel like a kindred spirit in the NFL. I kind of feel like we're the same because we end most practices with some sort of competition. You know, we play tic-tac-toe with our gloves and our bats, or we have relay races, home to second, second to home, or we play this game called Guts. We do things like this all the time. So very similar to the Tennessee Titans and what they're talking about. Look, I'm all for thinking outside the box or trying something different. But when I hear something like this at the professional level, the first thing that I think, Jared, is they need to hire better people. And they need to acquire better talent, because I think all of this hokey stuff, it only works when you have the right people. But if you're breaking out the hokey stuff like this, it means you don't have the right people in your organization. And that's not just sports. That's every company on the planet. If you hire good, competitive people that work hard, that are talented, you don't need to get together and share your 4 H's, because everybody does their job and they do it well. But when you don't have that and you hire people who aren't the most competitive or aren't the most talented, well, you lose a lot of games or you lose a lot of business, and you end up having to force feed some sort of 4-H system or 8 separate teams with captains and co-captains and everything else. It's absurd, and it shows me that the Titans need better personnel, period.
So when you hear that and you hear that they're trying to develop leaders, I have to ask this question. Do you think Brian Callahan is a good enough leader to develop leaders on the football team?
No, I don't have any. Look, this is not a slight at him. I just have no evidence to know that he is a good enough leader to develop leaders with what he's done so far in his career. So, I mean, I have to answer no, because I don't know with Brian Callahan. And I'll also say this, like, if you watch, any sports documentary out there or anything about great teams in any sport in history, and there's always that story of the player who joins the locker room
for that team, right? Like they join the group and it's like, man, I arrived and, you're watching The Last Dance and, Ron Harper joins the team and boy, it was Michael Jordan leading the way and practices were so tough and gosh, this is so difficult. I just watched the Celtic City on the Boston Celtics. Kevin McHale joins the team after Larry Bird and I showed up and those practices in the preseason were so competitive and it was tougher than games. And I'm looking around and Robert Parrish is there and Larry Bird and Dennis Johnson and these great players and great competitors. And I knew then that things were serious. You think anybody's walking in the Titans locker room and saying, man, this is my welcome to the NFL moment? Because I looked up and these guys were there and I just knew things were going to be different from that point forward. So again, I'll go back to my first statement on bringing in these hokey games and different things. It's an announcement that you don't have the right personnel on your team, which also means you don't have the right leadership. And I don't think you can teach leadership, honestly. I think you draft the right people that are going to be leaders, or you bring them in free agency and you let them lead. I'm not one to believe whenever I hear a college program talking about we got to develop leadership, we need leaders to step up. I'm thinking, well, you haven't done a good job recruiting because you need to have natural leaders on that roster already. And if you don't, and you're searching for it and you're trying to coach it, you're not going to succeed.
Chad Withrow with us on the program. What do you make of Callahan saying that they're going to split reps? Everyone made this about Levis versus Cam, but I kind of wonder more so Cam, Brandon Allen, Levis, etc. Titan fans are not happy to hear that. What do you make of it?
I mean, I don't like it, but I understand if you want to have the disguise of an open competition, then you start at this part of the off season and say, well, we'll split the reps, and then pretty quickly we'll decide who gets more reps than others. Because Cam Ward should be the starter. I think he's going to be the starter. They drafted him number 1 overall to be the starter, and that's the way it should go. I don't love it, but I also kind of understand the coaching model of we're going to give guys a fair shot, or at least have the appearance of that to start, but quickly go with what your plans will be.
Would you have a problem? I mean, they play week 1 at Denver, and I know that Denver, I believe Denver and Seattle are the 2 hardest places to play in the NFL. If they were to say, hey, our offensive line, we've got all these new pieces, it's going to take some time for them to gel together. We don't want to get Cam killed against a top 10 defense with the defensive player of the year out there. So what we're going to do is we're going to play Brandon Allen for a couple of weeks, the same way that the Patriots played Jacoby Brissett last year for a couple of weeks. Then we'll put Cam out there after Denver and the Rams. We'll put Cam out there if he's ready against Indy in week 3. Would you have a problem with that? If it's not, hey, we don't trust Cam, we just don't think that the environment is right for Cam to go.
Yeah, I just think scared money doesn't make money in that respect. And if you drafted Cam Ward to be your franchise quarterback, put him out there. If you think he's the right guy, he's going to be able to be okay after getting beaten up in Denver and probably losing badly in that game. The great ones that started from day one, they had bad first years, and their careers were just fine. And I know you're going to bring up maybe Patrick Mahomes or other examples of guys that set, but Patrick Mahomes sat behind a better quarterback, right? Wasn't Alex Smith still there at the time?
Yep.
When he sat originally. So there's not a better quarterback on this roster. Like if they had a veteran guy, if they had, Matt Halfback back in the day, let's say, if they had a better option of a veteran guy who had started before and had success, I would say, yeah, let's start the veteran for the first half of the season. Let him get acclimated. Let him get more confident in the system and all that. And then start him once the season goes off the rails in November or whenever. But there's no better option on this roster. So, I mean, it's sink or swim. And if it's sink in year 1, it was mostly sink for Caleb Williams in year 1. But I don't think people are saying Caleb Williams is a bust after year 1 because he struggled, a lot of the season. People are pretty understanding that it's going to look rough at times for a rookie quarterback, especially with this roster. So I say let the kid play from the start.
Is it not crazy, though, that Caleb threw for 3,500 yards, 26 touchdowns, and 9 picks? And we're like, yeah, he struggled last year.
Yeah, I mean, it's just because we expected so much more because he was this otherworldly talent is what he was sold as, like the best number one pick quarterback prospect since Andrew Luck came out as the number one pick. And because he wasn't the rookie of the year and Jaden Daniels is better and led his team to more wins, I think the assumption is automatically, he struggled more than expected. I mean, I'm not completely sold on Caleb Williams, even after those stats. I think he's going to be fine. But if that was the season that Cam Ward had, I think Titans fans would be thrilled if he even came close to that season. And I think he can.
When you look at a quarterback like Bryce Young, because I was talking to Chris Sanders about this today, and Chris Sanders is like, yeah, just put Cam out there. He'll be ready to go. And I'm like, Bryce Young, I thought Bryce Young was a good quarterback at Alabama. I was concerned about his size in the NFL, and I would have never traded what Carolina traded to go up and get Bryce Young. But I don't think Bryce Young is bad. And if Bryce Young fails, I'll put that on the Panthers. I'll really believe that. Do you feel the same way about Bryce Young? Because I think it's easier to use it, with a different team and a quarterback that's already played, who's already struggled, who I think has real talent. I mean, because it's like Titan fans just believe, oh no, Cam's the guy and he's going to be the guy from day one and he's ready to go and there's nothing that can stop him. And I'm like, but Bryce Young has struggled, and Bryce Young, I thought was pretty good.
Well, I think that it's not as much. I think you have this idea, and look, you read your own text line more than I ever see it, so you know what Titans fans are saying. I don't know a lot of Titans fans that are saying Cam Ward's going to be awesome from the start. Oh, he's ready for the NFL. He's going to be a star right away. I'm not hearing from those fans. I think that's ridiculous if someone actually believes that. I don't think people that want, and I'm one who wants Cam Ward to start from the beginning. That's not me saying Cam Ward's a finished product. He's ready for prime time. He's going to be great from that opening game against Denver. That's me saying you picked the guy number one overall for a reason. And if you believe he is your franchise quarterback, you believe he is made of the right stuff to take his lumps in year one and be fine. I'm not sure Bryce Young is made of the right stuff. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't know that I could say that about him because of what happened early in his career. Now, if the argument suddenly becomes the organization can ruin him because they're that bad, well, you better fire your coach and your GM pretty quickly if it's that bad, that they're going to ruin a quarterback in year one. And you better find someone else so you don't continue to ruin the quarterback. That's a separate conversation. But I always think that we put too many kid gloves on around quarterbacks in the NFL, especially early in their career. And there are so many examples of guys who were thrust into that starting spot from day one, and they got whipped in their first season and went on to Hall of Fame careers. So I think it's possible, and I think for the guys who are legit franchise quarterbacks that are great, they can handle it no problem.
Are there really that many guys that got whipped early on and became great quarterbacks? I mean, I know that Aikman, got absolutely annihilated. He would later get benched for Steve Berline, but that's different. Aikman struggled early on. Manning 3-13 that first year. But how many guys are like Trevor Lawrence where they struggle that first year and they never seem to really get it?
Yeah, well, I think we're now comparing, just mid quarterbacks versus great quarterbacks. And we're trying to make their situation equate to all the other ones.
But didn't we think coming in, Trevor Lawrence was a generational draft prospect?
Well, he was, but doesn't mean that he is. I don't think it means that Jacksonville or him starting early did anything about that. He just maybe he's not as good as everybody thought, right? I mean, everybody thought that Shedeur Sanders is going to be a number one or number two pick. He went the fifth round. And he may end up being great. He may end up looking like a number one, number two overall pick. I'm just looking at the totality of careers of guys where their careers have already ended. And we've seen examples of guys who struggled early and went on to be great. Now, odds are, Jared, let's play the percentages here. Are the odds higher that Cam Ward is going to be Deshaun Kaiser, Tim Couch, or Jake Locker, or that he's going to be Peyton Manning or Patrick Mahomes? I mean, we've got
definitely that he's going to be Tim Couch.
Huh?
Definitely that he's going to be Tim Couch or Trevor Lawrence or Anthony Richardson or Mac Jones or whatever.
Well, what if he's Jameis Winston as the number one overall pick?
Yeah.
Right? Like that. My point is, the Titans are drafting him number 1 overall, saying, we need a quarterback. He's the best quarterback. We have to have a franchise quarterback. This guy's made of the right stuff. That's all we've heard about him, is that he's got the story, he's got the moxie, he's got the brains to be a starting quarterback in the league. Then play him right away and let's see. And if he does struggle, there are examples of guys who have come back from that. Now, I don't think you can just use this. Well, here's an example of a guy who was great in college that they played him right away and he got worse and worse and worse. Well, that's his story. And that guy maybe wasn't as good as we thought. I don't know how good Cam Ward is going to be. I'm simply saying, if you draft him number 1 overall, you start him right away, especially when the other option is Will freaking Levis. You start him right away. If he walked into a spot where there's a better quarterback on the roster, you start the veteran and you let the kid learn. That's not the case with the Titans. Their quarterback room sucks. So he's the starter by default.
Chad Withrow is presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. The hot seat awaits next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Still in a company, 1025 The Game. Chad Withrow with us from Outkick, presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Chad, do you have a thought, or do you want to go right to the hot seat?
You know me, I'm always ready for the hot seat. Let's do it.
Okay, number one, Derrick Henry signs a 3-year contract with the Baltimore Ravens, 2 years basically fully guaranteed, which means Derrick Henry will be a Raven and will be their running back through his age 32 season. The Ravens essentially have the option on 2027 at age 33. Derrick Henry is currently less than 7,000 yards, 6,932, away from breaking Emmitt Smith's record. He could do it if he maintains his production by the age of 35. Do you think Derrick Henry has a shot to break Emmitt Smith's record?
I don't think there's any chance that he's going to break that record. I think what this shows with the greatness of Derrick Henry, it shows the greatness of that Emmitt Smith record, because there's no way he's going to continue that productivity until he's 35 years old. But, I mean, what it does show to me also is the Ravens' investment in him and seeing the wear and tear on his body, but how he continues to produce and produce at such a high level. I mean, this guy's a Hall of Famer, and he's going to continue on this path. He's a Hall of Fame football player. And the hope is for him and the Ravens is that he's going to be a key part of getting Lamar Jackson in this Ravens team a Super Bowl. But no, I'm saying no chance of him catching Emmitt Smith.
How about this, though? He's 34.95, so 3,500 yards away, which if he runs for 1,900 yards again this season like he did last year, he'll be a lot closer to, from being top 5 all time. Derrick Henry.
That's awesome. And good for Derrick Henry. And, I hope he's remembered as a Titan, but at this rate, who knows, depending on how great the Ravens become in these next 3 years with him. But he's always going to be loved by this city, that's for sure.
Number 2, were the Titans stupid to let Derrick Henry go?
Yes. Yes, they were. Perfect follow-up because, I think they probably were. Now, both teams are in different spots, and we can go back and litigate where the Titans were and if it was going to be smart to invest that much in a running back at that point in time. And, boy, the Ravens seemed like a Derrick Henry away from winning a Super Bowl, and they don't win a Super Bowl. What does that say about the move for them and all of those things? But I just, it's a bummer when a guy who goes from second-round pick to legend in a city to the central figure in a lot of good times for the Titans and some winning seasons, and a guy who's a legend in the market and with the fan base, whenever they leave, it's a bummer. So, I'm going to say the Titans made a mistake.
Number 3, L'Jarius Sneed apparently injured his quad on October 13th, 220 days ago. The Titans said it was a bruise from a helmet to the quad. Sneed would later be placed on IR on November 23rd with what was considered then a quad bruise and a quad strain. The Titans continued to go out of their way to say that it was not the knee, with which was already injured when they acquired Sneed, that led to him missing the rest of the season. Asked about L'Jarius Sneed yesterday, Brian Callahan says he is still recovering. That is 220 days ago that he received a helmet to the quad, supposedly, according to them, that led to L'Jarius Sneed's injury. Are you buying what the Titans are selling?
Not really. Look, I'm just going to give you my gut on this because I've got no inside knowledge or inside sources. But I think L'Jarius Sneed was an injury-prone guy with an injury situation when the Titans acquired him. And I think the Titans, while there's probably something going on with the quad too, are hiding the fact that they got a guy that was injured to begin with. So, no, I'm not fully buying what the Titans are selling.
Number 3, UT baseball well on their way so far in the SEC tournament, but are you worried about Tennessee baseball after the way they finished the season against Vanderbilt and Arkansas?
Yeah, look, I think they're going to get beat in the regional. I'd be shocked if they go to the super regional. Here's what I've learned in my short knowledge of college baseball as truly a fair weather fan who just jumped in when Tennessee got good at baseball, and I'll fully admit that. these teams, if you get to a certain level of talent and have a chance to compete for titles, it's very fickle in the makeup of your roster and possessing whatever the it factor is, right? I think we've attributed a lot of it to Tony Vitello, and I think he does have some of that it factor of that, don't give a bleep type mentality with him, and his team sort of play that way. But I think what we've seen with this Tennessee team this year is just because Vitello coaches the team and just because they're loaded with future major league talent doesn't mean they're going to have the it factor. And this team doesn't have the it factor. They're not clutch. They don't play good defense. They're not smart base runners. They allow some negative things to really affect them mentally. They don't bounce back from things well. Yeah, they're a team that's going to get beat in the regional, whether it's as a 2 seed or as the last team to host the region as a 16. They're not getting out of the regional. I'll be shocked if they do. They got the talent to do it, but I just don't think with the makeup of this year's team that it's going to happen. And on the flip side of that, I see Vandy, and I see a team that's not as talented right now as Tennessee, which is a difference than in the past, but they've got some of the it factor this year. So maybe that's a Vandy team that could go on a run in the tournament.
Number 5, how much credit does Tim Corbin get after the last couple of years at Vanderbilt, failing to meet the expectations that he has set for that fan base, to have a team that, as of right now, according to D1 Baseball, projects as the number 3 seed in the NCAA tournament?
I think it's got to be deeply satisfying. The ability of this team to win close games by playing smart and playing sound is going to carry them a long way. And we saw that in Knoxville in some close games also with some big mistakes by Tennessee. I think it's got to be deeply satisfying for him because all the momentum was going Tennessee's way, right? They're national champions. They're winning in-state battles, which Tennessee wasn't winning before for recruits. Even the Vandy fans were disappointed in Tim Corbin, even after all that he had done for Vanderbilt. So, yeah, I think this is a satisfying season for Tim Corbin. But if it ends in a regional loss or even a super regional loss and not in Omaha, fans are still going to be disappointed.
Number 6, what are your feelings on the latest drama surrounding Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark?
I think it's great for the WNBA. I don't understand how they're an actual on-court rivalry there because Caitlin Clark is far better than Angel Reese. I mean, this is like saying Michael Jordan and Dennis Rodman were rivals with the Bulls and the Pistons and not Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas. Caitlin Clark has more 25-point 10 assist games than anyone in WNBA history. She's 2 games into her second year. Angel Reese is a great rebounder. They're not similar players. They're not on the same level as players, but their rivalry going back to college and the fact that Angel Reese reacted the way she did to that take foul by Caitlin Clark, it fuels the rivalry, and it's great for the league, and it's great for both of their brands. So I don't think Angel Reese is smart enough to know what she's doing when she responds that way, quite frankly. But I do believe that the way she reacted and then the way she posts on Instagram after and everything else, I think it helps because if not, that rivalry goes away. Because if not for that, we're talking about Caitlin Clark being 4-1 in the league against her and coming off a 93-68 win over her team. So we had a little bit of drama, and I think that helps the league.
Here's where I'm bothered. Number 1, I don't think Angel Reese is very good. Number 2, I am so tired of every time anything happens between them. It's like, if I think Angel Reese isn't very good or I think Caitlin Clark is good, I'm racist. And number 3, I am so tired. I mean, Ryan Clark, and I'm not a cancel culture guy, and but I also think that, like, if someone were to come on the air as a broadcaster and say something insanely offensive, that they should be reprimanded for it. And what he said about RG3's wife being white, I think means that I think Ryan Clark should be reprimanded for. I think he should have been suspended or fired for what he said. I think this Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark stuff brings out the stupidest in everybody. I'm honestly tired of it. Nobody just has the cojones to admit it. that Caitlin Clark is a much better player and more people like Caitlin Clark because more people want to watch her because she's better. And that Angel Reese, is the bad guy here for rubbing her finger in Caitlin Clark's face a couple years ago. And she just needs to accept it and she won't. And it bothers me that nobody will say it.
Yeah, amen to all of that. And I'll just say that if we just treated sports and athletes just as human beings and we didn't get into the identity politics about it all the time, like we could cover everything so much more honestly and fairly without, ever worrying about someone saying, my wife, Angie, is of Swedish and German descent. Can I only talk about speed skating in Bundesliga for that reason? I mean, it's the most absurd argument.
Was I just completely Well,
ahead.
I was going to say, was I just completely, because I was 8 years old at the time, like ignorant to, I don't remember during Sosa and McGuire in 98, it was like, hey, if you want McGuire to break the record, you're racist. I don't remember that. And people didn't like Barry Bonds. And I don't remember this kind of like, hey, you know what? People don't understand what Barry Bonds is going through. It's like, yeah, he's cheating. We all know. When did it change? You say, hey, we got to objectively cover sports. I felt like we objectively covered sports. Pedro Gomez was up Barry Bonds' ass for years with the Balco and the steroids and nobody ever thought, I think Pedro Gomez is kind of racist. He doesn't understand what Barry Bonds is going through. So what happened?
Well, I think when we started to veer down this road of everybody has their own truth, whatever year that was, like, well, your truth is your truth and my truth is my truth. Then we sort of veered into this level of, well, if that's the case, then how dare you ever comment on a black person in sports because you don't know their truth. And that's where Ryan Clark is just feeding that monster of, well, I'm married to a black woman, so I can comment on black women. Isn't that incredibly reductive to black women, by the way, that Ryan Clark, if we want to talk about racism, that Ryan Clark feels like he speaks for black women and that all black women think the same and feel the same and act the same? That's incredibly racist to say. Like, if you really want to nitpick about racism, saying things like that is also racist. Again, everybody's different. Everybody has different backgrounds. Everybody has different thoughts, emotions, all these things. If we just covered it by what we saw and didn't worry about all that, it would be so much better. And here's the other thing I'd like to know. If someone did something racist at an Indiana Fever game, which, by the way, maybe the dumbest place on earth to say something racist or homophobic at would be a WNBA game, which I highly doubt, by the way, happened from anyone, right? Like, that's the dumbest thing you could do. We talked about this with Clay on our show today. Like, if you polled Indiana Fever fans, would you rather be caught on camera saying something racist to Angel Reese at a game, or would you rather get a DUI going home and get arrested? They would all say they're going to get a DUI. They can come back better from that than they ever would from being caught saying something racist or being kicked out of an arena for something racist. If you're going to make these allegations, we can't just make them and then issue a statement from the league and from the team. We condemn racism of all kinds. We, the WNBA, we are against racism, and then not follow up with anything. Well, did anything happen? Do you have any proof? Did you locate a fan that said something? There's cameras everywhere. I mean, it's so stupid because then the story goes from, man, Caitlin Clark is so much better than Angel Reese. They're not even playing the same sport. She's so much better, to white people are racist. Indiana Fever fans are racist. And Angel Reese is once again the victim. And you can't comment on anything that Angel Reese says or does or any reaction she has as a human being if you're not a black woman or you're not married to a black woman. It's stupidity at the highest level.
Well said. Chad Withrow from Outkick, as always, on our program. Chad, great stuff. We'll talk soon.
Always a good time, Jared. Talk to you next week.
That's a good man right there. Chad Withrow on our program. Speaking of Chad, his former colleague, Paul Kaharski, had quite the rant today. Now, I'm not going to have some crazy rebuttal to this, but I do want to discuss it. So we'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
I mean, think about the way that Tom Brady prepares.
Yeah.
I mean, Jared prepares.
He
But
does.
Tom Brady is the all-time preparer of like all things in the world.
Yes.
That Jared Stillman said this yesterday with no shame. That David Reed did not pause. 3 people, actually heard this live, and 3 people sent it to me. They were like, dude,
You
have
to
fun
hear
with this. This is the most outrageous claim ever made on Nashville Sports Talk Radio since I've lived here. And you people out there cannot stand for it. You must hit him with a barrage today about all the ways that he is nothing like his hero, Tom Brady, whose farts he would buy to sniff out of a jar.
As we've learned.
Yeah. This is unbelievable.
That was PK today, the PK rant, which was a rant about yesterday, something I said on the show. Actually, something I thought I had said before. Maybe I had, maybe I hadn't. I don't know. I also love how PK was like, 3 people texted me about this. One, as a broadcaster, thank you. That says people are clearly listening to the show. But Reed, I'm going to venture a guess 3 people didn't text him. I think that was a Rand Carthon thing there. He was probably listening when he heard that.
Let PK cook, man. Just let him cook.
I got to tell you.
No, he was listening. I think he admitted he was listening.
Okay. So that's the first thing. But I do want to respond to this. So yesterday we were talking about our 4 H's. You know, Brian Callahan wants everybody to go remember the Titans, you know, and talk about your heroes, your hopes, your heartbreaks, and your history with each one, which is very, again, high schoolish, but whatever. And Reed and I talked about our 4 H's. And one of my heroes is Tom Brady. I love Tom Brady. And Floyd said to me, and I told the story yesterday on the show, which Paul's all worked up about it and pretending it didn't happen. Say, there's no way it can happen. Floyd said to me one time, he said, the way that you do radio, that's the way Tom Brady does football. The way that you are just constantly obsessed all the time, that's the way Tom Brady does football. And as I said yesterday on the program, and Ian bleeped it out, Reed, I think I can say that word on the air, right?
I don't remember what word it was. Apparently, you already said it once on the air.
Starts with a B, and it's as John Moxon, the old quarterback, left. Pedro. I think I can use that on the air, right?
I'm confused as to what it actually is.
I said the word boner on the air.
Oh, okay.
I can say that, right?
As far as no.
Ian bleeped it out. I'm like, Ian, what are you doing? So I said yesterday, he bleeped it out this morning on the morning show.
I guess we can't talk about old episodes of Growing Pains either. And
I don't know. I got an internal, not an external, an internal Woody when Floyd made that comparison. That did happen. And so Paul was like, no way it happened. Let me just say this. I'm not going to ramble on about, I think I'm so good at radio. I'm not going to do that. Because, again, if I do that, if I start talking about hey, I've accomplished this, or I did this, or if I start doing that, then it becomes Jared Stillman is just so obsessed with himself. He can't get over it. He can't. I mean, I tried to make a point when Vrabel and I got into it that one time about how, I'm pretty secure in my position as a talk show host. And it turned into Jared thinks he's so good. So I'm not going to just go there and tell you that I think I'm really good. But I have the confidence that I can do this job. Floyd absolutely said it. The second rebuttal I have to this is all Paul ever does is constantly complain about how all Stilly does is listen to podcasts and everything out there. He says everything. I say this. How do you do? Because I'm obsessed. Because I'm obsessed with the radio. I'm obsessed with the job. I could make more money doing other stuff. I could go to other markets. I could do it, but I don't because I freaking am obsessed with the job every day. And when I watch, these guys that are very successful in all walks of life talk about how much they love their jobs or how much they hate to lose or just how obsessed they are. That's me. I am staying at a 5-star resort in Costa Rica, texting Chase saying, what do you Chase said he didn't think Xavier Restrepo could not make the team. And I'm texting him saying, what's the matter with you? Like, I'm obsessed with the radio. I'm obsessed with the job. I'm obsessed with the teams. And I just don't think PK can have it both ways. You can't say, oh, Jared hears everything and listens to every podcast and reads every article, but there's no way that he prepares at an elite level. And then also say, like, again, that I don't prepare. Like, I do. I mean, I don't want to sit here and talk about how hard I work, but I work really hard. And I work people really hard because I have high expectations. And so there was one thing PK said that I heard that I was like, okay, don't project yourself onto me. Here's what he said.
Does the guy work hard? Yes. Listen, I'll tell you a story. I used to work at the Tennessean.
Okay.
Right. And I thought I worked hard when I worked at the Tennessean. Then I went to ESPN.com and they asked so much more of me at ESPN.com than I was asked to do at the Tennessean. And I had conversations with my other colleagues that I worked with at ESPN.com. And the ask was so much more. We all kind of agreed, like, hey, we thought we knew what hard work was. And now we're really learning what hard work was.
Okay. What does that have to do with me? Does he work hard? Yeah. But when I went to ESPN, it was so much harder than the Tennessean. What does that have to do with me? And let me say this. I work at Sirius XM. So I do the shows that all those other guys, Mad Dog Russo makes millions and millions of dollars on that station. I do not, but I'm on that station. It's not any harder than this job. I prepare the exact same. To me, it is the exact same. Taking a call on this show from Laverne is the exact same as taking a call on that show from Phoenix. Instead of the Titans, it's the Cowboys. Instead of Ryan Tannehill, it's Aaron Rodgers. It's the same. And again, I don't want to sit here and tell you, this person said that I was good or this because you get mad. But like at the Super Bowl, I got incredibly jazzed up for two separate reasons. Number one, Mad Dog Russo was on our show at the Super Bowl. We taped the interview. And at the end of it, Dog said, he goes, and we'll play the cut or whatever, but he said, Jared, you are a fantastic talk show host. And this is Mad Dog Russo. I bought his book when I was a sophomore in high school. And Mad Dog Russo is sitting here telling me, so we do the interview. And I don't think I've told this story on the air, but we do the interview. And then after it's over, he's walking off and I'm like, hey, thanks for doing this, Dog. Good to see you. And Dog points at me and goes, a fantastic host, and keeps walking off like Mad Dog freaking Russo. And then I went on the Boston station, 98.5 The Sports Hub, the Felger and Maz show. When I first got into this business, that was the show, because I was in New Hampshire, which was the Boston area. That was the show I listened to every single day. I was all in. So they invited me on their show at the Super Bowl, which is consistently ranked as the number one show in America. And I went on that show to talk Vrabel, and I brought it. They were loving it. Their crew was loving it. Everybody was. The people in Boston were loving it. They're like, we got to get this guy back on there. We come back on the show. People in our text line are like, that was fabulous. Those were two moments at the Super Bowl where, again, I felt like for a brief moment, I felt like, man, like all this hard work, it's for something. And you can make of that whatever you want. You can laugh about it. You can do whatever. I don't care. But I'm telling you, like, there are very few people in this industry who I think are actually good at this. There are so many people across the country that I think if you replace that person, they make a bunch of money, they get good ratings, you replace them with some other schlub and it'd be the same, it'd be fine. And then there are people that I think are irreplaceable. And Floyd said what he said. There's no way to prove it. He's dead. But he said it. And it meant a lot to me when he said it. Scott Masteller used to consult for our radio station. He's the guy who was the program director in Portland, Oregon, when he had Colin Cowherd on the air. And then he went to ESPN and hired Colin Cowherd. And when I was 24, he told me that I reminded him of Colin. That was a moment where I was like, oh my God. Like, again, that happened. I mean, Paul can be mad about it and tell me about how hard he worked at the Tennessean, but again, I'm not in this to like win awards. I'm not in this. I'm in this because I enjoy every day the artwork of getting to do this program. And I don't want to make this about, Jared's good, Jared's bad, I don't want to get all into that, but it's like when you sit there and you act like, I mean, yeah, he works hard, but he doesn't work that hard. It's like, okay. 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company. Reader, you're going to kill me.
A little late. Speaking of being good at your job.
That is like
you
a more
can be
technical
good, you can put
aspect
at your
than it.
job, but you can't read a clock for anything.
Yeah, that's the one thing that the out times I'm not so good at. So what do I do here, Reed? Do I just take it to the end, or what do I do?
Let's toss to a break and we'll come up and wrap.
All right, there you go. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game.
I think we may have lost connection with Jared for the day. After all of that rant about how great he was at radio, something has happened on his end. Technical difficulties down in Forest Hills, apparently. Maybe it's some storm damage last night. But that's going to wrap up Stillman and Company. Stay tuned. Coming up next, it's Chasing Checkers right here on 102.5 The Game, 106.3. We'll see you again tomorrow starting at 2 p.m.